6 o'clock, we're gonna call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum, looks like we got a full house tonight. Thank everybody for their attendance. And we'll ask for the approval of the agenda. Has anybody got any additions, subtractions, or alterations?
You still need to read this statement, Mr. Brooks, over the top with the YouTube thing. and all that
Probably do
stuff.
need to read that. See, that's why you were doing a good job. Okay, we'll back up just a little bit since we have determined we have a quorum. And while this meeting will be held in person, the meeting in its entirety will be streamed live on the county's YouTube channel, available at https://www.youtube.com/C/Orange County, Virginia. Limited to in-person seating will be available if you so desire. So basically, anybody that's listening to us or want to listen to us, just go to the county's YouTube channel and it will direct you right where we're going and to that site I gave you. Back to the agenda approval, please.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Move we approve, there's a second.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any questions? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Approval of the minutes of August 5th regular meeting. I'm going to ask for the motion, but I'm going to abstain because I wasn't here. Mr. Capel handled that for me. So we would ask for the approval of 3 people who were here, please.
I've got one minor item.
Okay.
That was on the approval of the minutes for the July 15th meeting. I actually abstained and did not vote in favor of that because I was not here or appointed at that time. So if these minutes could just reflect that I abstained for that reason. Because I didn't attend the meeting and had no participation.
Can we add that to the minutes, please?
Yes.
Under technicality, can you add an E to my last name under absent?
Yes, sir, we'll correct.
Thank you.
Is there any other corrections? Can one of the 3 that were here
I
propose?
move approval with those changes noted.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye of the 3 that were here.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimous. Thank you so much for the approval there. New business, it looks like we don't have any on here for new business. I want to ask though, before we go to the public hearings, should we not put back on this agenda since we are having some public comment, the public comment back? Just the public can attend with them, just a question.
Yes, sir, we should, and we have usually kept that on here. I apologize for dropping that off. Certainly, we can amend the agenda to add it. Would you like that to be at the end of the meeting?
What I'm gonna probably do is just take a chairman's prerogative and call it now, and if somebody wants to come up and comment and it's not involved in one of these SUPs, then we can hear it. If that's a consensus, okay? Mr. Lansing, am I violating any parliamentary procedures by doing that?
You're fine.
Okay,
You can formally amend the agenda if you want, but it's not
okay,
stepping on any flagrant rules of law if you don't.
okay. So if there's anyone out there that wants to comment on anything other than the 3 public hearings we have scheduled, you can come forward. You get 3 minutes. I might give you 5, but no more than that for anything that you want to comment on that we're doing. We'll open that up right now. Going once, going twice, don't have to go 3 times, I don't see 3 people. All right, public comments closed. Took care of that part for us. All right, we're gonna do the public hearings. I'm assuming, Mr. Gillespie, you're gonna handle the county side of it first. We're gonna take them just as they're listed here, just because that's how we do the agenda. We would ask that we open the public hearing, SUP 21-2, an application by Christopher and Marie Gorman for a special use permit to allow keeping of horses on property located at 9292 Little Skyline Drive. This parcel is zone R2, general residential, contains 5.98 acres, and identifies tax map 28-73. The recommended future land use of the area in which the property is located is agricultural 1. We will ask Mr. Gillespie to go first with the county, and then we will ask the applicant if they're here to go forward or their representative.
Thank you, Chairman Brooks, members of the commission, Supervisor Johnson. Just a moment. We had addressed this in our preview. Let's see if I can fix this here.
That is being shared on YouTube channel.
It is. I just want to make sure you're seeing the bits of black off to the side, aren't you? Hey, Jim, do you remember what the fix was for that? Oh, you're getting the partial.
I'm getting the last one.
You're getting, okay, all right, my apologies. I thought that would be the same on the screen too. All right, so now we're starting that over again.
Okay,
You are seeing information for your meeting today. I'm going to start off with SUP 2102. This is located in District 1, the Gorman property. And the request in this special use permit is to keep animals not considered household pets in a general residential district. We received the staff report in the mail, electronically, it's published online. Just to run through a couple items here. Looking at the future land use for this area, you can see this is projected for agriculture, all in green. The subject property is highlighted in the yellow selection in the center of the screen, and you can see across the river in Culpeper County, outside of our future land use planning area. Chris and Marie Gorman have applied for the application, have applied for the special use for keeping animals other than those customarily kept as household pets. It is subject to a concept plan and some conditions that have been, that are outlined in the narrative, and can be presented this evening. You'll see the zoning implementation of the future land use, though, is a little more fine than the green, all agricultural. And so we'll see here A1 zoning in the green, R1 zoning in the yellow off to the southwest, and in the orange R2 zoning, which is the general residential. We're looking at a parcel approximately 5.9 acres in size, and the next image you'll see here is an overlay of a conceptual plan that was drawn over aerial imagery. And in this image, which is probably a little easier to see in your staff report, the house sits on roughly 1 acre of the 5.9 acres, and the surrounding 5 acres in pasture or field is the area proposed for keeping the animals, in this case horses. In the staff report, you have a variety of photographs. I opted not to bring those in to put up on the screen this evening, but if you have any questions or if you've not been out to the property, or if you have any comments on those, I'll just say that I would generally characterize this area as a rural residential area. It's a mixture of agricultural and residential land uses. It's a mixture of lot sizes. Some of the R2 districts up on Little Skyline Drive and the backside off of Governor Spotswood are smaller, but some are also quite large. And so this one is on the larger side. Gorman submitted a narrative with this application, and I think you probably all had a chance to read it. It does address all of the expectations for special use permits in the county in this narrative. So it speaks to how the land will be used, how the land and the turf cover will be protected, how the animals will have an appropriate setting, and how the number will be limited so that setting is not impaired or otherwise denigrated by their use of the land. Lastly, they do address some of the standard criteria for natural and cultural resources, fiscal impacts in the community, any that are expected, and the comprehensive plan generally related to potentially affecting the use of other properties in this area by allowing the special use permit. There's a letter that was provided by Virginia Tech Cooperative Extension Office related to the horse stocking rate And this generally comports with what most people think of as 1.5 to 2 acres per animal. That's the range they're in, 2 or 3 horses with a maximum of 3 for the 5 acres. So we have conditions that are proposed for extending the fencing in like kind with the board fencing that's present, limiting the number of animals on the property to no more than 3. And with those conditions, staff recommends to the commission approval of this requested special use permit for the keeping of animals in the residential district.
Is there any questions for Mr. Gillespie?
Is Mr. Gorman here?
Sure. So Mr. and Mrs. Gorman have joined by Zoom, and I believe I'll be able to recognize them in the meeting. I may need your help, Sally.
The part in the staff report about the environmental impact, the
Yes.
local water quality, what is the impact of 3 horses?
So they have described an area with running water on the property that the horses will be able to access. And so there is an unimpeded access to running water.
Are y'all looking for me?
So Mrs. Zailmaker, Commissioner Zailmaker has asked a question. This is Mrs. Gorman.
Hi,
Let's do this for a second. Let's let her introduce herself, her address, where she's located, and that she's the applicant, and then we'll let her state anything that she wants, and then we'll go back to that. Let's kind of do it that way. Ms. Gorman?
Hi there. I'm
Okay,
Marie
can you
Gorman.
state your name? Can you state your name and your address and where you're located? And then if you have anything you want to contribute, you can do so at this time.
Okay, yes, sir. My name's Marie Gorman. We are at 9292 Little Skyline Drive in Orange. We just bought this property in April. It was kind of a derelict old farmhouse, really overgrown. The property was a mess. We are renovating the home, and I'm an equestrian. I've been a professional equestrian. I've done it as a hobby. I started riding since I was a kid, so I know horses inside and out. So we actually just want to have a space where maybe we can have 2 or 3. There will not always be horses there. Just are pleasure horses, nothing, it's not a business. I don't do this for a living. So we want to just be able to have a couple horses there. I fox hunt in the area. I fox hunt with Keswick. I've had horses on my properties for most of my life. So I know pasture management extremely well. I was a pony clubber. So feed management, we're very careful with any environmental impact that we have having horses as far as cleanup with manure, runoff, any excess from that is good. What we spread in the pastures, I'm very aware of that and conscientious. So try and have as little impact in that way as possible. We're actually got 1 well on there now. We're looking to drill another well that's separate. Our well is not producing enough water, but there is a little corner where there is some running. There's a couple of springs on the property and the surrounding properties. So there is water. I was just talking to one of the neighbors this week, and he said right around our property and their property, there's like 4 different springs. So there actually is water. He said once in his lifetime, Mr. Monroe's been there, I think like 70 years. And he said only once has he seen there not be running water through both our properties. So is there anything I can answer for you all about our intention or us?
Is there any questions for the applicant? So, Commissioner, you can go ahead at this time.
Yes, George Yancey, District 2 Planning Commissioner. Would you be opposed to modification as to the fencing? I noticed when I visited the site, the fencing needs pretty much improvement in a lot of locations before you actually bring the horses on site.
Oh, no, yeah, we need to pretty much do all new fencing. There's wire down along the original road, down in the back along the bottom. I think there's maybe some old wire, but we would put in board fencing. All that fencing would go, and whatever fencing now is along the road would need to be repaired, if not completely replaced.
So if that was added as a condition, you would not be opposed to it?
Oh, no, no, sir, of course not. I mean, we're planning on doing that anyway.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, we're gonna try and clean up a little bit too down there along the road. We left it kind of overgrowth where it's down the road. We don't back on any neighbors. We'll clean all that up and get if there's any invasive species of plants down there. I'm not sure. We haven't looked closely at what's going on in there. But
Is there another question?
This is Julie, District 4. I was just curious, is the stream the only water source for the horses? Like if it freezes, is there an alternative?
no, ma'am, I'll put in watering troughs. That would not be a main source of water for them. We would make sure that there's always water on the property.
Is there another question?
I have a question. Ms. Gorman, hi, I'm Jason Capel. I'm over in District 1. And I want to ask a question. It's not a loaded question, but I'm just curious. And just so you know, I've looked through everything, and me personally, I can only speak for myself. I don't see any issue with what you've proposed. So this is a question that's a little bit, it's related, but not totally related. So I'm just curious, when you bought the property in April, did you understand the implications of it being R2? And, you know, because I imagine if you looked at it, you just assume horses would be allowed. Did you find that after you bought it, or?
We found that after we bought it, when the realtor had promised us that, no, it was fine, R2 was good, we could have horses on the property.
Okay.
So we found that out afterwards. And so, okay, it wouldn't be the end of the world if we weren't able to. The ones that we have, I would probably board, have to board. We would just have to figure it out, or figure out if this would be a long-term property. We want it to be a long-term property. So, but we did not know. The realtor that sold the property had told us that we could have horses on it.
Okay, so you were relying on the realtor. Okay, and may I ask, do you and your husband, are you still working now?
Oh, yes, we both work.
Can you tell me what you or your husband do for a living?
Sure. We publish magazines. I manage both. We publish one down in Florida and then one in Connecticut. And then my husband's also a trader, financial trader. He trades commodities.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, as a sidebar, I did have the pleasure of meeting and talking with two of the Gorman's neighbors. They were very complimentary of the improvements that they have undertaken. And I also learned from one this morning, just by running into him by accident, that that property had horses on it prior to them having ownership. So, and I gather there were more than 3 horses that were brought to my attention today. So I too don't have a problem with your application and your request. But in fairness to you, sometimes things are not properly disclosed in the process of purchase.
Any other questions? Anybody? Ms. Gorman, I have one. Are you gonna put a barn on this property?
Most likely, probably what we do is do a run-in shed to start. We're not planning on moving anybody over there immediately. So that's kind of still a work in progress. We haven't, if we did long-term, it wouldn't be more than a 2-stall barn. Just because there really isn't, I
There's a
mean,
reason I'm asking that, because I don't think you can, I could be wrong, and Josh is going to help me here. I just don't want to lock you in. In agriculture, you can put up a pole barn, and you really don't have to have very much county oversight. But in your zoning, I think if you put up a barn, you get a whole lot of county oversight.
okay,
So my concern was that you may not be asking for enough and then lock you right back into some setbacks and some things that come along with R2 zoning.
okay,
And just trying to make you aware of what you could be into. And so you don't get something and you go, oh, now I can't build my barn. What do you think I was gonna do with my horses?
Right.
You know, let them levitate in the air. So I'm just bringing that out as what's there. If you have a desire of that, you just hang tight, Ms. Gorman. I'm gonna ask the county people a couple questions. I'll get back to you in just a second.
okay, that would be great,
So
thank
if
you.
she modified that to say something like that, because I just see this as a big miss. The commissioners with me? Because R2 zoning for structures is completely different than agriculture, and all we asking for SUP is for a specific 3 horses and a fence.
Well, I don't know, I don't know if it was in the application or the narrative furnished, there was a mention of a run-in shed.
And then you're.
But the problem with that, and where I'm with that, is just basically say, let's make sure we get that into the approval so that we don't get into what R2. You can mark this one. That's fine. You see what's the conditions for R2 buildings, structures, Josh?
Sure, so this would be an accessory structure, whether it's covering lawnmower equipment or horses, it's an accessory structure. If it's a pole barn size and it's less than a certain square footage, then it doesn't require a building permit. If it exceeds a certain square footage, then it does require a building
In
permit.
R2 too?
Correct.
Yeah.
So again, if you go to Home Depot and buy a utility shed, if it's a certain size, it does not require a building
Yeah,
permit.
if you wanted a utility shed on your property.
It still needs to meet,
I read it that way.
it still needs to meet setbacks, that is true. And so
That's what I
if you place a structure in a place that's not allowed by code, then
But
it's
in
violation.
agriculture, you don't have to do setbacks.
On an agricultural parcel, no, yes, sir, there are
I think
setbacks.
you do a certain amount of barn in agriculture like you want it to.
It's still subject to the zoning setbacks, but it doesn't require a building permit. If it's an agricultural building.
Okay.
They are smaller setbacks than for the principal structure, but there are still setbacks.
Yeah, well, just kind of, if you don't have to get a permit, you just don't, I mean, nobody checks to see what it is, that's fine. So, I'm assuming you heard that conversation and communication that we were doing there. So, and if they think this would allow you to do that, then I have no issues. I just don't wanna lock you into something, then all of a sudden you think you got one thing you don't.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So if I heard correctly, if we did then want to put in, say, a 2-stall barn, I mean, I don't think there'd be any reason to ever go bigger, which is a relatively small structure, that would be okay? I wouldn't need to go through this whole process again, or I should put it into this now?
I don't know what 2-stall barns are.
Yeah, I mean, you've described a run-in shed, so would you say that a 2-stall barn is the same as a run-in shed?
Yes, yes.
Okay, then I would say a run-in shed and a 2-stall barn are the same thing.
So let's just,
Talking like 16 by, let's say 16 by 10, 16 by 8.
That's a building that wouldn't even require a permit at all.
The biggest part of that is that run-in shed has to have slats so that they can feed horses, say, hay inside as well.
It turns into a stall.
Yeah, it's like a stall, but horses like to move around, so they've gotta have more room than just the size of the horse is my point.
So the area, Ms. Gorman, so you understand what my question is, the area actually looks agriculture when I was there. And 3 sides of it is zoned agriculture, so I don't think you put anything out of the way there. I just didn't want you to get this for 3 horses and you came back and it was up to interpretation, nothing against Josh, a planner to say, oh no, you gotta go do this. And then we get cornered, with, why wouldn't you assume this? And that's the reason I raised that question.
Josh, may I ask, so I get the shed thing, but if this run-in, whatever you wanna call it, had power, you need a building permit,
Need
right?
an electrical permit.
Yeah, so Ms. Gorman, I mean, it depends on what you wanna do.
Okay,
You might, the worst case is you'd have to get a building permit, which is just meeting the construction codes.
okay,
But you wouldn't need to come back here for an SUP.
No.
And I think in agriculture, I'm not sure you even need a building permit.
Right, you don't need that.
I don't know, but.
If it's so we're off track a little
Yeah,
bit.
but the bottom line, you're good to go. You're gonna need a building permit to do the barn if you put power in it.
okay, but it's
It's
just,
different, totally different than this.
okay, so I would then, so when I'm gonna build that, I just then need an electrical permit and a building permit to put the shed in, but not a whole approval.
Well, it would still be an approval. There's just no public hearing. You either meet the requirement or you don't. It's an administrative approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar to the well permit, I'm assuming it's.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yep, similar to that. Yep.
Correct. And
And by no means are we trying to hinder you, we're trying to help you by suggesting these things open.
no, I greatly appreciate it. Yes, sir, thank you. No, I want to know anything that could get in the way before. You want to know all the bad stuff instead of just the good stuff.
There's no bad stuff in Orange County, Ms. Gorman.
That's what I was told. I was told.
Yeah,
It's
did your realtor tell you that too? All right, folks, let's move on.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes,
in discussing the site plan, the concept plan that they drew up, we knew there was gonna be a run-in shed on the property. And if there were a location on the property that I had determined that it could not be appropriate, I would have flagged that and we might have indicated on the concept plan, except for this area.
okay,
And so the reason it was not placed on the concept plan is because they don't know where they want it to go yet.
sure.
And so in concept, we're fine, as described in the narrative, staff is, that any location on the property meeting setbacks
But
is.
listen to what you just said.
Sure,
I determined that when I looked at
I
it,
did.
I did this, and you are the planner now. And then if we get somebody else looking at it 3 years down the road, I want to make sure that 4 years or you just happen not to be there. I don't want any stumbles for her, because she actually wants 3 horses, somewhere to put them, and that's what I want her to have, if that's possible. If we don't have any other questions, Ms. Gorman, do you have anything else for us?
Do not, no, sir.
Thank you so much for your attendance. Is there anybody signed up for this SUP?
No.
There's no one signed up for this SUP. So we have no public comment. We have had the county and the applicant, so we will close the public comment side. We will close the applicant side. Now ask commission, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I make a
Yes.
motion, we approve the application, submit it with the modification about fencing.
Mr. Chair, if I may ask a few clarifying questions about the modification. First, I would point out any modification, we need to have that in writing before the commission can vote on it.
Well, I think the only thing he said was he would put a better fence up.
Yeah.
Because the fence was dilapidated. She says, I'm gonna put up a new fence. So I guess we would say she would construct a suitable fence.
Sure. So
Okay,
whatever
so
it is,
can
it
you
just
say
it needs to be in
in your
writing.
motion that I move approval with a suitable fence being put up?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
In writing from the,
In writing tonight.
From the person,
Anyone.
from anyone, I mean, it
just-
can be on a piece of scrap paper and that's fine.
so
Well,
write,
I'm just trying to keep around.
write down what you wanted to say.
But I would just also note, on
That's what I'm
page
saying,
10, we
we have to see
do
it.
have a condition related to fencing. So just,
Yeah.
we may want to compare
Where is it
that.
at?
On page 10 of the
Page 10
application,
and 15.
Can
it
you
says
just,
existing fencing shall be maintained and extended as
I've
generally
already
shown.
written some down there.
Mr. Lanson, can Mr. Yancey just annotate the page?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's perfectly fine.
Adding to staff's suggested verbiage, I would add must be improved prior to horses being allowed on site.
Well, it's there. really, I'm not disagreeing. It says fencing, this provides a secure fencing with appropriate fencing around the horses. Now, I don't know what else you would surround.
Well, some of the boards are down on the ground, and there is one area that has no fencing whatsoever.
So how about if we just say this, Mr. Nancy, existing fencing shall be improved
Prior
to
the horses being boarded on site.
maintained and extended as generally shown on the concept plan prior to horses being boarded on site.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
Good.
Trying to keep that animal control away from
Is that what we?
That works for me.
All right, so let's restate that motion with that in it, and we will move forward. Is that what help you, Mr. Lansing?
That's great, yeah, as long as it's in writing, we're good to go.
Existing fencing shall be improved, maintained, and extended as generally shown in the concept plan prior to the horses being boarded on site.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Respectfully, if I may, to follow the language in the ordinance, we would say kept on the property.
Okay, all right.
Prior to horses being
Kept.
kept on site.
On the property.
All right.
A little particular there at the last
I
meeting.
know. I
That's
gotta
what I'm
interpret
saying, everybody, we playing workmanship here, but
that. I
we
wanna make sure
don't
nobody interprets after me.
Oh, sir. You expecting something?
Bada bing.
No disrespect, sir.
You expecting something here? All right, so let's go back. George, restate your motion, like you want it, and then somebody second it if they want it. So we know we got it right this time.
Pass that over so Eric, he's gotta get it right, that way. How else do you know it's in writing? If we take it home with
I
us.
trust you that it's in writing.
Yeah, well,
All right, one more time.
sorry.
Existing.
No, make your motion again.
I'll make a
we
motion that
approve.
we approve the SUP as presented with the following modification under the fencing section on page 10 of 15.
All right.
Existing fencing shall be improved and maintained and extended as generally shown on the concept plan prior to the horses being kept on the property.
We heard the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Nichol,
Aye.
Ms. Zellmaker,
Aye.
Mr. Brooks,
Aye.
Mr. Yancey,
Aye.
Mr. Capel.
Aye.
Thank you.
Pour that sheet out.
Thank you, Ms. Gorman. We're gonna out you now, and thank you for your attendance.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Y'all have a good weekend.
That's okay.
All right. Get that to Mr. Eric, please. Okay. Josh, let me know when you're ready for the second SUP.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we're gonna move to the SUP 5B, SUP 12-06 amendment, an application by Vista Corporation, Vista Construction Group on behalf of Jeremy and Melanie Beveridge to expand a public garage A&M Auto located agricultural zoning at 8475 Goldale Road. This parcel is zoned agricultural. Zone A agriculture contains 4.5 acres and is identified as tax map 36-44J. The recommended future land use of this parcel is agricultural A1. The application would amend the conditions approved by 1206. This applicant is requesting deferral until September the 2nd planning commission meeting.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, in the middle of last week, the applicant has requested some additional changes and amendments to their case as applied for. So after we had scheduled it, as we were getting ready, we went out and discussed those conditions. like to bring this back on the 16th of September. So one item we've not talked about in your meeting tonight is your next meeting schedules, which are the 2nd and the 16th. This cannot be ready for the 2nd. We can't advertise it. It's already passed. So I propose
Can we take it to an October meeting?
we can.
I kind of want to leave that second meeting for us for something other than SUPs and things like that. Leave it for our work schedule, for informational sources, things that we need to work on, things we need to pay attention to, and not turn into a regular meeting that we start meeting and hearing things. We can get in this mold of the first meeting is for SUPs and action agendas, and the second meeting will be for anything we can have to catch up on or information we'd like to know, or workshops or things like that. And that's what the chair's prerogative for. So that's why, since he's requesting it, let's push it off a little further.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it will include an additional parcel which adjoins the subject property, so the application will actually be extended to the adjoining property, which is all the reason, that's why we were not going to take any amendments last week.
So I did some research on this, so while we're doing this and talking about it.
Sure.
It appears that our building department shut down some work that was there that was already being done without the proper inspections.
There was a building constructed on the property without a permit, and it would have required a permit. So part of what they had proposed to do is to add onto the building, a new building, that requires an SUP. The reason, the owner in this case had conducted work on the property that was not allowed by the conditions of their SUP, and it was constructed without a building permit. They are now proposing to add onto the building again, and when it came in, we realized, the other work occurred years before, but we realized this can't be built on this property. You don't have the zoning permission to do it, and you have a building permit that, property that needed a building permit. It didn't.
So are they gonna tear it down?
No, sir.
They're just gonna add to an uninspected portion?
Our building inspector has inspected it. It's been found. It's all open work and
It's okay, so
inspectable, so it's.
because when I went there, I saw it. I mean, I just didn't understand what I was looking at.
Yeah, so basically it's a multi-bay garage. It was extended. It's all open on the interior and the exterior. They have a small storage shed building, which they've been using as an office outside of the main outside of the main vehicular bays. They want to remove that building and come forward into the property with the office space. So.
Yeah, I think they just outgrew it.
Okay.
Yeah, but that said, there were changes proposed to storing of vehicles on the property, which is a condition of the SUP. They have proposed additional changes that were not part of this application they brought in. So we said this can't come forward.
Okay.
I'm working with them on it. So.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I remember this. When was the first permit done?
2012.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, it hadn't been very long ago.
Could you, as part of this, could you, pull up the old permit,
The special use permit or the building permit?
the original SUP?
Oh, absolutely. So we'll include the SUP 2012 in your packet.
Can you also, I just remember a lot of discussion about this. And I remember it being a little contentious. And I remember there being some neighbors that weren't real pleasant, or not pleasant's not the word, that weren't real happy about this, and they had made some accusations that maybe some things were going on that weren't supposed to. And then I remember these folks saying that they definitely would stay on the straight and narrow. And now we find that they built a building. And the way we found that out is they wanted to add on to the building. So, I mean, that's a little interesting.
well, and I will say this, I don't think anybody's going to tell you I fully intend to violate my SUP if you give it to me. Everybody's gonna promise us that. I just think that what I wanna see in our packet is all the information that you have on this particular property, whether it comes from GW's group, Josh's group, the fan, the ceiling, the wall, all of that. I just wanna see it all in our packet.
Yes.
so that we can evaluate it properly. Because I've already received calls about this, and that's how I knew so much about it. I can't remember, my memory's not good as Jason's. But I do remember the approval of it, I just remember it being there, but I think in fair to, especially these two commissioners who came on after, they need to have a complete history of what's going on so that we can vote honestly and openly for what's happened, not just coming in with the cleaned up version and then we go forward, because it's a pretty egregious thing, according to my thought process. If you get a SUP and you violate it, then you want another SUP. That's what the person said to me. They said, they got a SUP, they violated, and now they want another SUP. We all do violate that too? What are y'all doing up there, Donald Brooks? I said, I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm listening to you. And it's just kind of how it goes out there for us. So I would like to see a complete packet. That's what I assured this gentleman I would ask for, is a complete packet of everything that's allocated. I don't care if the packet is 460 pages long for every commissioner. I want a complete packet.
I just need electronic.
Well, I don't care how you get it to us. I just want a complete packet so that when we look over this, we have a fair and everybody can comment any way they want. I'm just sharing what I want, what I personally want.
So what I'm hearing is all of the information from planning cases, from permit applications, but also I would add, which should also be part of it, the minutes from the planning commission meetings where the hearings were held.
That's right.
As Mr. Capel saying, there may have been some comments that weren't reflected anywhere other than public comment.
Can you include the C and D order?
Sure, that's, yeah, from the county, absolutely.
Okay.
And I would ask you, Josh, if you would,
Too bad.
tell the applicant that we requested this and we've already received complaints about it, so he can be prepared to help himself. That may be a logical reason. Hey, dude, we outgrew it. We didn't realize we were screwing up by putting the building out there to put an office in it. You know, there it is. But I'm just saying, let's be fair to him too. We're not hiding anything. Look, the commission's got a complaint. The chairman has said he would like this and with the consensus of the commission, and everybody can understand that. Is that asking too much, Mr. Attorney?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Board's gonna wanna know it too, right, Mr. Johnson?
I'm sure we will, yeah.
I just don't, I think at some point, if you do this, you don't wanna start setting precedents of violations and giving again. And when someone else violates, you're gonna have to give them again.
This is District 4, so
I
I'll
was
give you
hitting-
more information as well.
That's what I was heading.
Yeah.
These commissioners. I gave you a name today. I said, by the way, I don't know.
You told me, call me. You told me.
All right, folks, so we'll go to October the 2nd with that. That gives everybody a chance to go.
We want people to succeed.
We'll be glad. Okay. Consensus of the board, consensus of the commission to go to October 2nd with this public hearing. Is that correct? I just need a consensus.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's October 2nd first.
7.
What is it? October
October
1st, no, 7th.
The second is a Saturday.
Okay, no, we don't want to go there. We want to go October 7th. Is that the consensus to go there? And that gives enough notification time for you, Tracy, to get stuff notified
Yes.
and to gather all the data that we need.
Yes, that said, they do need to provide some amended conditions to what we discussed late last week. Well, I don't have that yet. And so I am dependent on them giving us conditions that I can bring to you.
Well, we actually given them a whole 30 days longer than they had, so
Yes,
it's not like if he wants to build this,
right,
I'm sure he's gonna move fast.
right. So, but just in the meantime, we have a public hearing sign up on the property. People are calling commissioners and I don't have all the information because we haven't received the amended changes yet. So that's just information.
That was a pressure call for me. They just want to see where you come be in that position for everything else that's going on. That's all that was. I get it. I'm slow, but I ain't the slowest. But anyway, here we are. Okay. Let's move on to public hearing C. The Orange County Board of Supervisors, STA 21-01. The Orange County Board of Supervisors proposed to amend private road standards relative to construction standards and including platted lots. Mr. Gillespie, you go ahead first, and then after you finish, we'll call for the public comment if there be any, and then we'll move in that fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Text amendment STA 2101 to the subdivision code of Orange County proposes to amend private road standards. This is in your packet, so this is walking through the 4 pages, sort of at the end of road and access standards with red line markup for the changes. So this item brought to you prevents the subdivision ordinance text change per direction from the Board of Supervisors to prepare an amendment to do 2 things. First, revise road construction standards for private roads serving 8 to 10 lots. And secondly, to authorize development of subdivisions recorded with private roads prior to the adoption of the new road standards by an ordinance effective 2018 as validly approved and recorded to use the private roads which would otherwise require approval by the Planning Commission and apply the standards for road construction that are in the code to those developments. So when Orange County required new roads to be public roads, except for private roads were approved by the Planning Commission, a number of platted subdivisions remained undeveloped. The undeveloped subdivisions have been found recorded in the 1970s and 80s and potentially further back. So essentially leaving paper streets that have not been built. Proposed language will allow the development of those subdivisions with private roads, not public roads, as otherwise required, without going to the Planning Commission for approval. Additionally, the proposed change would streamline road construction standards by removing 2 items. 1, the bearing ratio that only applies in the lots 8, 9, and 10, which require pavement. The bearing ratio would specifically apply to the asphalt, because the second change proposed is to add in that 3rd tier for private roads serving 8 to 10 lots, the option of having a gravel stone surface or gravel stone construction as opposed to only asphalted construction. So we're looking at section in Division 2 of the road and access standards. We're looking at road approval, construction, and maintenance standards. So A, B, and C lay out the terms for driveways, public roads, and private roads, and where those conditions could exist. And under C2, private roads, it establishes the standards for private roads. And in this case, we're looking at, as you can see on the red line here and in your packet, in the table, column C refers to the subbase. In this case, California bearing ratio rate is no longer to be required. And in B, on the surface, that surface aggregate be used as stone material as an option or asphalt. And so that language is changed to allow the option of a gravel surfaced road for serving 8 to 10 lots. And then lastly, in this section, to identify where this can be used, in related to previously platted lots, there's a section that states with respect to any subdivision plat that was approved and reported in the Orange County Circuit Court prior to the adoption of these standards in April 24, 2018, adoption by the board, which showed roadways which are designated as private roads. Said roads may be constructed subject to the standards and requirements contained in section 54-121C2, which we just looked at, the changes that we just proposed, and subject to recording a road maintenance agreement pursuant to the section requiring that, which is 54-122. There was a draft of this text amendment that was presented to the board that put a sunset clause that previously platted subdivisions would have to be built within 5 years of the creation of the standard in 2018, and so by 2023. And after some discussion, the board removed that stipulation that there be a sunset. So unfortunately, though, in the community, that piece of information was out there as an intent. So there's been, if you all heard anything about that particular provision that was out there as a point of discussion, is not presented and recommended to you at this time. We have received no written comments. I have had a number of conversations by phone, in person, with members of the community about this, but no comments in writing other than one which we received 3 days ago from Piedmont Environmental Council, which we forwarded to you with their request that be read into the record tonight if the chair allows it, and you all had a chance to look through it.
I don't care if that's read into the record, but.
Yep, and lastly, staff does recommend approval of the text change.
Well, that's kind of. Almost kind of, I mean, I get your point there.
May as well be on the record. May as well be on the record.
I've got some questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, hold on just a second. Are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Bell, go ahead.
What's the largest subdivision that you came across?
So I don't really have a great answer to that. I do have a PowerPoint I'd like to run through and just kind of show geographic distribution of some of these as we know them.
Wait a minute, what do you mean you don't have a good answer to that?
Because there are a variety of conditions that exist related to previously platted subdivisions. Some are partially developed.
But what's the largest one?
I believe there is a subdivision with private roads in Orange County that is partially developed with 40 to 50 lots.
That have yet to be built?
That is partially built, it's partially developed. So some roads have not been extended. In those cases,
It's 40 to 50 total or 40 to 50 still to be built?
yes or no, 40 to 50 total.
And how many have already been built?
In the 30s, so it's mostly built
Almost
out.
filled.
That is a rare exception. I mean, that is almost a unique case. It's sort of, I think that's in District 3 or 4. It's kind of in the northeast part of the county. The majority of those, as you can see here, properties that are served by private roads are distributed throughout the county. You can see obviously very large parcels here and the large peak areas. But I'd like to go through a couple that are smaller. These are going to be in the somewhere between 3 to 10 range of those that would be permitted to have private roads and that we have private road construction standards for. There are a number of these off Cox Mill Road where a street was put in and then another street was put in, another street was put in. And you can see highlighted in yellow where some of these streets have been completed, but we still have, lots 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11 yet to be built. And so the practice has been to require that road to be upgraded as they go past each one of the thresholds in here. So that's been practice. This would definitely solidify that if there was a paper street, and I'll show an example of one of those. This is a good example of a paper street. Our mapping actually is a little misleading here because we show, all respect, Jim, but we know the error here. Unfortunately, what it shows is that there's a right-of-way connected to the state right-of-way. So as you see those open lines and the roads are running around, I'm going to use the mouse, I think, to show that a little bit. So this is Kendall Road, which is a state route. This is Berry Run Road, which is a state route. And this is a paper street that's been platted and recorded, and these lots are all lots of record. As you can see, they've not been built on, they're vacant. But unfortunately, when it was mapped as a right-of-way. The right-of-way was not intended to be dedicated to the county, but to be built as a private road and maintained as a private road. So this subdivision today, we would require, without this text change, it to be built as a public road. With this text change, this previously platted, recorded subdivision could be built with the private road standards that we have in place. Similar situation here. These parcels are each 50 acres in size, and so they're on a lot, they're on a road serving a number of parcels. Once it exceeds 10, it has to become a public road under the standards in the code. But at present, it's unclear what the status is of this road if it were to be developed with two houses. We would most likely require that road to be built along the frontage according to the standards. So this would clearly identify what the standards were.
So hold on just a second. So if we go and say they had to go back and put state roads in, who would we required to do that? The last lot builder or the entire subdivision?
So the way it works now is we require the first lot builder to build
No,
up
no,
to.
no. Those lots are already there. So if you went in and said that you gotta bring it up to state standards before I will approve this lot being a buildable lot, who's got to pay for that? The people who already been there, the person who's putting up the last lot?
Oh, so in
What if
this,
it's no roadway agreement or no ingress, what if there's no agreement that's established that I bought a house, it's sitting here, I never gave any thought to it? Sort of like the last person had with, it looks like agriculture, looks like a place a horse should be, why can't I have my horses? So the realtor says, yeah, every realtor is gonna say, oh no, there's no roadway agreement, you can move in here. I'm just using hypotheticals here. So now who do you go back and say? Does the county say, we're gonna build this and you're gonna pay incrementally according to your lots that's there? What's the enforcement part?
so if I may, look at the two different situations, because I actually thought you were referring to this situation first.
Well, you can look at that and
Okay.
use the reference.
Right, so in this case, and again, I'm gonna use the mouse because.
So go to number 7.
Sure.
That's not built, right?
Correct, none, all these are vacant.
All those are vacant.
So if lot number 4 wanted to
So
build,
why is 7 light green, dark, what is that all?
we just failed to hit the selection in there, that's all.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
this-
because it appears that
Yeah.
there's something different there. That's because I thought they
Yeah,
were built.
no, I'm sorry, what we're
They're
showing,
not.
yeah, I'm sorry, probably should have introduced this a little better. What we were showing is using the standard GIS tool that we have today. And
Right.
Jim Whip's gonna present on our new and improved GIS tool, but under the standard GIS tool that we have today, there's a selection feature where you can select individual
Okay.
parcels. And so.
So none of those are built.
Correct. Frontage lots along Berry Road have been built on, as you can see. So I'm gonna move the mouse again. These parcels have been built on without requiring that internal subdivision road, even though they were part essentially of family land at one point. But none of these parcels have been built on, including.
Slow down for me, just
Yep.
stick with me for a second.
Sure.
Using our present ordinance, how would we enforce them to bring that to the standard that it should be in?
At the building permit stage. So any individual applying for. a building-
So if I applied for lot number 7.
Yep.
And I wanted to build, you're gonna tell me I gotta build the whole road out, or I can't build there?
I was pretty surprised when I learned that when I started in Orange County too. But yes, that's the practice.
Hold on, that's the practice, that's not instantiated in the code.
Mr. Lansing, is that our practice because it is in code?
It is in code. Now, there are certain resorts that
Where
the
in
new
the code
builder
does it
might be
say
able to.
Show me that, I was
Where in
looking
the
for
code
this.
does it say the first lot must pay for the entire road?
No, it isn't quite clear.
If it is, I mean, if that were undeveloped land and you could slice off a lot and somebody could put a house on it, that wouldn't trigger it. But these lots have already been created.
Right, so
That's
any,
the difference.
so that's why you
So the
get
first
triggered.
person who wants to put a house on
That's where
it
you got there.
is stuck.
Mr. Johnson's got there.
Well, but hold on, that's a practice. Okay, so that's a decision outside of this, and that's that's the implementation of the policy. So someone has decided that that's how they're gonna do it. Whoever does that can decide to not do it that way.
No,
Why not?
So the code,
Eric
Not the way I-
just told you it's in the code.
It's in the
He
code.
just told me it's not in the code.
All right,
I
I
asked if
say
it's in the code, and I said, show me, and you said it's not in the code. So,
No, I can show you where it is.
Okay, show him in the code.
54-121. If you look at A, there is,
this is in your packet, so if you want to.
Okay.
there's a definition of
Say
driveway.
that, make that site again, Eric.
54-121.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Capel, I cannot show you a place in 54-121 that uses the words, whoever is the one who adds the subdivision or adds the new lot or builds on the new lot is the one who has to pay for it.
Okay.
But I think that's reasonably and fairly implied in what 54-121 says.
Okay, so let me see what you're looking at.
So first of all, subsection A, it has a definition of a driveway.
Oh.
A driveway is 1 or 2 lots served. So if you extend it beyond that, then it becomes subject to the requirement that it has to be built to the standard that would be necessary to integrate it into the VDOT roads.
But I think my question was, I'm the first lot.
Right.
So I don't have to adhere to this standard.
By first lot, you mean the first lot that was on that driveway before?
I'm the first buyer.
Right. So
You're saying the developer,
I see. So
So
let's let
under the-
Mr. Brooks, I follow. Let's let Mr. Brooks follow that through, because I understand. So we'll talk about 1, 2, and 3.
well, that's right, we're talking about 1, 2, and 3. So
That's
if somebody's came in here and they have subdivided, I come and buy the first lot. What's my obligation to that road that's in that whole subdivision?
it's none, and that is not because of any specific requirement in 54-121. It's implicit in the Fifth Amendment.
Why would the person not selling the lot have to pay for the road? I mean, that's just crazy. Like, who said the person who buys the first lot has to, I mean, the person selling the lot ought to have the road.
The subdivider should have the road
Yeah,
built before.
I mean, that's just common sense.
Well, hold,
I mean, like,
let me have a little bit,
what in the
Jason.
world?
I know, Jason, I know, but let me have a little bit, please, Mr. Capel. So let me try to work my own thought out here. So now, I bought the first one. Mrs. Allmaker buys the second one. This gentleman buys the third one. Now we've triggered driveways.
That's correct.
Now who pays? He's gotta pay according to this code.
That-
He's gotta pay for everybody, and not just, everything is in that subdivision in there.
Well,
Here's
wait a
the,
minute.
here's the caveat. that I
Hold
was
on a second, because I watched the video, all right? So like, let's erase these assumptions that I think are correct, and we can get into them, right? So what is keeping the county from requiring the person who subdivided the land to pay for the road?
Nothing, I don't know.
Well, hold on, because I want to understand this, because like, we can build this tower so that it's gonna fall down, and that's kind of what I see going on. I mean, there's all these assumptions, well, we have to honor this and honor that. Well, no, we don't. And we'll get into it later, but let's answer this first. So where does it say the first person who buys the first lot must pay for the entire road system?
It's the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment says that basically the US government can't, or no government, including ours, can take property, and that includes requiring them to make improvements on property that they already have under certain conditions. So I can't take an existing landowner.
But how can you force a landowner to build a road on someone else's property? He doesn't own the road. I mean, you know, this
Stick
is.
with it, because that's where I'm gonna go next.
But I don't understand this, because like, this is not making sense. So you're telling me that we can't make the person who owns the land build the road, but we can make someone who doesn't own the land build the road?
So Mr. Capel, as I understand the ordinance, the requirement to build the road up to VDOT standards is a prerequisite to the person obtaining subdivision rights.
It is
that also
for new subdivision rights.
Well, it's not
correct?
for existing.
So we're talking about building,
So
right?
whoever is acquiring these new rights is the one who's responsible for,
So the subdivider's acquiring the rights.
So
where do I go back and get my money from this beautiful VDOT road that says Brooks Expressway? When do I go back and get my money from everybody else?
It's almost
Who
like
comes in and lives off of Brooks Expressway?
It's almost like we've set it up so it'll fail. I mean, like, this is just like, I'm like listening to this and I'm like, just like, how does this make sense? Like, oh, the Fifth Amendment says we can't force someone to build a road. Okay, but I can force someone to build a road on property they don't even own? Like, how, this doesn't make any sense. But
so that's where the private road maintenance agreements that are existing between these landowners would come in. And so whoever is responsible for whatever new rights they're obtaining in the subdivision would hopefully, I can't guarantee this, but would hopefully be able to share costs.
But he's only sold one lot. There's no other owners. So, I mean, this is like, I don't even understand, like, it makes no sense at all, the interpretation and the application. And that's got nothing to do with what's written in the ordinance, and forgive me, I'm not a lawyer. But that Fifth Amendment stuff, I don't think, that doesn't sound right to me either. I'm not a constitutional lawyer by any means, but, you know, the idea that we can't force a guy to build a road on his own land, but we can force someone else to build a road on someone else's land, I got a feeling that's just gonna fall apart really quick.
So I think, Mr. Johnson can speak to this better than I can, because he's more in the intel of the board. I think that's why the board sent it back, because they realized that this became a little bit
Well, but they sent,
ambiguous and a little bit, the same questions we have, so was a citizen having. You're gonna make me build by our philosophy and procedure, you're gonna make me build a road at either the first or the third lot. I don't care which one it is. You're gonna make me finish out his subdivision that he didn't finish out, that the road might be to nowhere. Nobody might even tell you the truth. Finish building them, maybe finish developing it.
I mean, listening to the setup of the discussion, like, yeah, what else could we possibly do? But I'm saying, I heard the discussion in the hearing, or in the board, and I'm listening here, and I'm like, you know, like, we don't have to do the things the way that we're doing them.
Well,
It
hold on a
makes a
second.
heck of a lot more sense, and I've got a bunch of questions on this, because
All right,
another
hang
thing.
tight on your question. Let's
Okay.
take a little bit of time,
All
so we don't get too confused here. Mr. J, I
So,
need your help here. What's,
You're in a heap of trouble.
well, I'm there anyway. So the board's intent for us to look at this was actuated by something. What caused this hammer to drop to make it come back to us so quickly?
Well, pretty much the reason why you get any of these things like this is because there's a problem somewhere that we're trying to fix. I think, and help me out, Josh, if I may say something that's not correct.
Of course.
It's hard to believe, but it could happen.
it doesn't happen that often.
So I might be experienced, I just have that experience.
I think a lot of interesting things have been brought up, but they don't really have anything to do with this. All this is saying is, if you've got previously plotted lots that were done prior to April 24, 2018, you essentially can
Do whatever you were doing.
you can do whatever you were planning to do in 2018. We're not going to impose new
So in
standards.
essence, you're saying they're grandfathered.
Yes, and we've changed a little bit here of what's, now, you can be for that or against
Yeah,
it.
I got it.
Okay, but this has nothing to do with these, this is not connected with this other issue, which I think is also, it's a good thing to talk about.
But we're here,
Well,
we're actually here.
well, it depends what-
Well, but it doesn't, but this is not, this doesn't change that or add to that or detract from that. That's out there, and whether you all adopt this or not, or whether we adopt this or not, it's not gonna change that other issue that you're talking about.
Well, just a point of rule of thought.
Josh, am I wrong?
No, that's absolutely
But
correct.
there's some references, Josh, back to this. When we say we're not dealing with this, references are made back to this. So when you look at all of that, it says compliant with 121, which refers it back to 121, which really starts that rule. Maybe,
The
and
problem,
I get what you're saying. All you're asking us to do now is grandfather everybody April 20, 2018
Well,
back. I get
Josh, again, I think the problem was you had people who are, they've got this plan and they've done X number of lots, they've still got a ways to go. We're just gonna keep applying the rules that were in place when they started all this, as opposed to putting new updated rules on them. Is that correct?
No,
Somewhat. So the one thing that would change is the road construction standards that were not clear prior to.
Right, you're talking about this part?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
prior to
That-
2018.
And that was, I noted that the first time through my
That's right.
recitation.
That's right. So they now apply to everybody on a private road. What doesn't have to happen is.
And I'm sorry,
Sure.
I'm doing the same thing everybody else is doing. These two things are not one and the same. These are two different things. We're doing a little cleanup here of the road standards that we felt was maybe not quite right.
Right, what the first, well, let's say the last is the first, because
Okay.
really the origin is in the beginning. So previously platted subdivision that's been recorded does not, and I brought a different illustration up on the table on the board, because I think this one is helpful. This is 3 lots.
Okay.
They're stacked up in a row. Lot number 1 cannot access the main road in and of itself. It has to access the access easement that was planned in 1989 when the subdivision was planned. These lots have never been built on, nobody's ever developed the first thing. There's no road, there's no grading, nothing has been developed. There's
Question though,
Sure.
but you're not changing anything for them.
So today, if they were to come, if a developer of these parcels or of lot number 3, or we'll say the westernmost deep lot in here, which is actually one of the triggers for this consideration, purchased the last lot, which was still the first lot to be built on, but they purchased the deepest lot in, which is often.
But there's 3 lots.
Correct.
Okay.
One individual has purchased one of the 3 lots. That
Okay.
one individual wants to build a house. The driveway, private road, travel way, okay, because I'm gonna use a couple terms there, but the way to get to that house eventually is gonna serve 3 properties.
Right.
And so by code, it has to be built as a public road.
No, it
Yes.
doesn't. It has to be built to these standards right here. Number of lots, 3 to 4.
So
I
we
mean,
have,
you're not changing anything for that one.
so we have to go to B, public roads. Any road serving more than 2 lots shall be constructed to meet the current VDOT standards, including but not limited to the secondary street acceptance requirements. So what this does is it says bypass B and go to C. Because you were previously platted, you can do that.
The essence of all of this is that unfortunately, prior to 2018, we didn't have a deadline for a developer to comply within a certain time frame.
Correct. So there's a long history. I don't know all of it, but I will share.
It's not anybody's fault here.
Right.
It's not your fault.
Right.
It's just a fact of life that it exists and.
But I will
Wait,
share now, if I may, I do know some of that history.
Well, but hold on,
Okay.
Josh, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but you're not presenting this accurately.
Okay.
Okay, so that is true what you said, unless they come to the planning commission, and then they can do these,
The
if it's approved here.
The warrants for it to be approved by the planning commission are very narrow.
They're not narrow.
I can go into that.
But I mean, we've been through this ad nauseum. Like, we don't need to go through
Hang on a
this.
second,
No,
Mr. Wells,
that-
let him
that
try to
was-
explain it out.
Yeah, that was what the board changed in the spring of 2019. So prior to 2019, subdivision was phrased in such a way that it looked as though the planning commission had this just blanket authority to either grant or not grant a waiver for a private road at the planning commission's sole discretion. So that the planning commission would just essentially have this purely discretionary authority to allow roads serving 3 to 10 lots to comply with these reduced standards in what you see here as subsection C2. The problem is that that didn't comply, well, there were a number of problems with that, but the main was that it didn't comply with the state code. The state code only allows waivers to be granted in the event of unusual situations that establish extreme injustice or hardship. And that concept has been defined very narrowly in case law. And it basically goes back to what we mentioned a minute ago, the Fifth Amendment, the takings clause. It essentially is designed to accommodate the avoidance of situations that would violate the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment. So the planning commission's authority to grant a waiver for a private road under subsection C is actually very narrow. That's why actually a few times in the past, when this commission has considered applications for waivers for private roads, the county attorney's office has actually stepped in and we've made recommendations against the waiver because it didn't qualify for the standards laid out in this section.
So there's way more wrong with this than what's being presented right now. I mean, what you just told me is this entire section C is basically invalid.
It's basically invalid.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's invalid, I would say it's very rare situations that it was applied. It's very rare situations that anyone.
So you're saying the enforceability is not there?
Under the current phrasing, pre this amendment, It is rare situations where a road serving 3 to 10 lots would be able to comply with these reduced standards that are defined in subsection C2. In the vast majority of instances, C2 being the very rare exception, in the vast majority of situations, a road serving 3 to 10 lots needs to comply with the standards that would be necessary to be integrated into the VDOT system, even though VDOT does not actually enforce those standards. The county has essentially opted into those standards. And so that creates a dilemma, of course, because those standards are very hard to comply with and they're very expensive to comply with. And so that's kind of the purpose of this amendment, which is to say that people have relied previously on the understanding that they would be able to comply with reduced standards in their future development that they have in mind. Then we can honor the expectation that they had prior to 2018 when these enhanced standards were adopted.
I mean, it's like, there's so many layers of this, that are just not sounding right. Like this is old news, right? None of this that you just presented was in our package. So we're just hearing this right now. And so there's a bunch of layers to this that, we're not gonna unpack here. So, and I'm not even saying I agree, I'm not a lawyer, but I mean, it's like,
Well, the zoning ordinance, to a degree, Mr. Chairman, if I may be
Sure.
allowed to respond to Mr. Capel. The zoning ordinance is kind of like Frankenstein's monster, in a sense. The thigh bone's connected to the hip bone, and so everything is connected. So I mean, I don't think we can ask staff to give the background 40 steps back in time as to why this was being done. I mean, a lot of what Eric is explaining isn't directly related to this. Some of it was, but some of it isn't.
It is if it's the basis of the quote problem that precipitated this.
Okay, so
I don't know if it was, because I don't know what precipitated it.
So what I want to do at this juncture, if I can, just kind of lighten the load a little bit, ask Mr. Gillespie to finish up anything he's asked to say. We're going to open up for public comment, then we'll go back to discussion for the board. But before I do that, and not cut Mr. Capel off, I'm going to leave some room here at the end of both for us to have some questions and answers. I just want maybe, sometimes we may be enlightened by something else and see what the flavor of it is there, to see where it's there. I don't know if anybody signed up or not, but this is, this seems like a little bit heavy-handed for one meeting. Maybe we need some information for another meeting, and I think we're gonna dice it out. When I say dice it out, I think Mr. Johnson brings a good point. What we're dealing with is this, and we can push it up or vote it down. That's our prerogative. But before we do anything, I would suggest that we make sure we have vetted it out pretty good, because the board's probably gonna get to the same issues. They got the competence level that we do, so they'll get to these same issues and see where it falls and where it doesn't fall. But Mr. Gillespie, if you want to go ahead and finish up, because I could see us
Sure.
keep going and,
Sure.
and it's not taking anything from anybody, I think it's all important, but just to have a little.
Sure. So
I'm not in
I will-
anymore. I apologize.
No, we'll get an opportunity to talk again.
No, that's
I
okay.
promise you.
That's
I
okay.
just gotta move on a little bit.
Right.
So,
So I will get to closure just because I'll finish and I'll close what I'm saying, but I'm not sure that I'll close the discussion that you all are having. So certainly I'll answer any questions I can. I did want to add just in the history here, this particular illustration of which I have just one or two more, shows 3 parcels, one after another after another. It was platted in 1989. It followed a planning commission waiver, which was granted at a planning commission meeting in 1989. It's never been developed. And this is one of the ones that had a lesser than 50-foot right-of-way associated with it. For now, in our construction standards, we also have a right-of-way width expectation. Again, it's not a public right-of-way, it's the right-of-way for the folks that have the right to travel the private right of way. And it's 50 feet, it's standard, it does not vary. In the 80s and the 70s, some of these codes came into being in the 70s. It varied, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, it was inconsistent. And to Mr. Yancey's point about the construction standards, some of these projects, which is what I was about to say at that point, were bonded and went through a normal process where the county accepted a bond for a private road and was kind of the sureter of last resort, would step in and help develop out these things. One of the comments that Chair Crozier made in the work session, really his closing remarks were, I really wish all these private roads were bonded. Well, none of these private roads are bonded now, and that's part of the challenge is we have 3 parcels, there are lots of records, they're paying taxes in Orange County, they want to pull a building permit, we tell them they have to build a road. And we tell them it has to be a public road. So what this amendment proposes to do is to say, no, you can build a private road according to what we have as our current private road standards. So that's my closing.
Any other questions for Mr. Let's start there. Here.
Well, I don't know about the cost difference between the standards for the public road and the private road. Is there any way to give like a valuation of that so we understand like what is the difference? Like over time, if you have a public road, it's maintained by VDOT. But if you have a private road, you're going to, like those other people, have to split the maintenance over years and years and years. And if you did it right from the start, what is it gonna cost you, I guess, over time, if you could compare the two?
So I can't give you hard numbers, but I can say that over the course of a year, there's probably gonna be 1 maintenance action, maybe 2 on a gravel road. And depending on the length of it and how many are served by it, they may pay a couple $100 a piece for a little new stone and scraping to come out there and service it. So, $200 times 10 people times 20 years, and that's a number. VDOT would have done the same thing if it was a VDOT maintained gravel road over the same period of time. So that's your comparison on that. Now the road construction standards are enhanced for public roads, and they're also enhanced for these private roads because Orange County at one point had really no standards for the construction of private roads. So these are now standards that are in place for private roads. So it's both the initial construction and the maintenance over time. Does that answer some of your question?
Yeah, I just was kind of curious, like, if you saw like a dollar amount, to really compare it, like, is there a certain amount per foot or something?
I would say $200 or $300 per lot per year.
So I think what she's asking is a little different as you answer it. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe I can see if we can help here a little bit. A private road would cost you $5 a foot, a state road would cost you $10 a foot, a private driveway would cost you $25 a foot. That's kind of what she's looking for. So she can actually, is that what you have to? She's looking for what, if there's some, what burdensome are we putting on the developer, the county, or the subdivider when we enact such ordinances? Is that kind of what you do? That's what I thought you were.
Sure.
Can I sort of respond, and Eric, you help me with this? I've talked to Mr. White, District 2 Supervisor, extensively about this. And his point, and I think it's a valid point, is that the county has no justification for setting an expiration date for a right that was previously approved and duly recorded in the circuit court at this point. So, as much as we may dislike this, put yourself on the other side and say you're one of those people.
Yeah, that doesn't answer her question. That doesn't answer her question of cost.
Well, the cost is there, I think all of you know my preference is, it has to meet standards so that a school bus, a fire and rescue, and can get there and turn around and get out. To me, that is the minimum requirement that we should have, but, unfortunately, we didn't have that back in 1980 or something, or 88. So, the fact is, are you gonna try to rectify a decision made then, now, and the plat is recorded properly and was approved properly? And are you gonna ask the people to come up with a jack to do it?
I have a question
You
that's
can.
exactly on point to that. When did the county require that the planning department approve subdivisions?
We've been in the creation of the subdivision code in 1970.
Really? Yeah. You sure?
Oh, the planning department as opposed to an agent of the county? Is that what
Well,
you're pointing to?
what I'm asking is didn't it used to be that you would just get your plat and go down to the court and file it? And there was no planning department involvement?
So are we talking about the grand sweep of time, 200
Well,
years or
listen, man,
50 years or
listen,
what?
No, we're saying that somehow the county has approved something that someone submitted, and we now owe them something.
Correct. So
And what I'm saying is, and what I'm asking, my understanding is there was a time where the county didn't approve those plats at all. And people just went and filed their division.
Right.
So we have no responsibility, there's nothing to honor. The county didn't approve anything.
Yeah, I mean, most model codes came about in the 1940s and 50s, and it would have been the county, probably would have been the county administrator, or I'm not even sure that was the title of the county manager or county administrator at the time, but probably would have been the agent of the county. But in the 70s, when the planning codes came into being from the state model codes, that would have been when some other agent was set up to be the subdivision agent of the board. But it's essentially all done as an administrative delegated authority from the board.
Right, so I mean, it's administrative.
It is.
All right,
Yeah, so it's.
so before y'all go too far with that, Ms. Zolmaker had the floor, so let her finish.
Yep, so.
I know, I was just kind of curious, what is the burden to make somebody go up to the
Sure.
standards of
Sure.
VDOT? Like, what, is that a dollar amount? If we can't quantify that, then that's just what I was getting at. Like, if you're gonna do something, usually you should do it the right way from the start and not try to, fix it later, you know? So that's, I was just trying to see what the burden is.
Absolutely. So I can just state, my opinion is, it's in increments. It's probably not double the cost until you get to a paved road, which by necessity should have been built with a good subbase, which allows the paved road to be able to stand up and not settle and sag and have the issues that unfortunately probably some of the private roads that were built in Orange County with an inadequate compaction of the soil and the stone, then have the blacktop on top, that have the blacktop and begin to fail more quickly. So they saved somebody saved some money at some point in there, but it's the step up to the asphaltic covering that's really the big jump up in cost. But to go from 4 inches of gravel to 6 inches of gravel, that's a very small increment of change. Maybe somebody 10, 20%. The width will drive some of the rest of it. The state requires a little bit wider, but essentially what.
The real question is, Josh, not to cut you off, but the real question, can you figure that out at some venue? Can you get some type of table, scale, or whatever that says for every mile it costs you about this for this? And that's what she's asking for. Just if you can figure that out somehow,
Yeah.
what does it cost to build a road? Ask somebody in your field of people and see what that's really what you want. That's what you want. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Percentages is one thing, but going up 10%, if it's $1 million, it's a whole lot different if it's going up 10% if it's $1. I think that's what Ms. Zolmaker is. Not to cut you off, but I saw where she was going with that. I was reading her notes here. So that's what she's after that. All right,
So construction costs, they're based on mobilization, they're based on.
I bet you there's
there's
developers out there that can tell you exactly what's gonna cost them. Because if they're complaining about the undue burdensome, they can tell you what it costs them to do it.
Sure.
And that's what she's asking, can we get? All right, let's move on a little bit, because we're not gonna stay wrapped around this wheel all night, but we are gonna finish it up. So if it builds to state standards, there's no requirement, because it's built to state standards, that the state must take the road over, correct?
That is correct.
And the state is taking over less roads than they ever have before, even though I heard we have a surplus.
Sir?
Yeah, so I guess that's the only question I have. Mr. Yancey, you got anything?
No.
Mr. Capel, now you can finish, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I think Ms. Zalmaker has a great question. I'm curious, Mr. Nickel, with your experience, do you have any idea like what a public road costs, like on a thumbnail versus like this 8 to 10, like?
Yeah, well, I think actually Josh was on the right track because it all depends. So how long is the road? How, is it let's say it's serving 10 lots, but they're really, it's way out there, right? So it's 3 miles long. That's a much different deal.
But how's that material? It's 3 miles of this road or 3 miles of the
How
other?
it's material, Jackson, not to intercede, but soil consistency is a difference in the
There's
world.
just so many factors. It just
Yeah.
depends on.
And if you've got bad soil, you basically gotta take it all out and put a new base in and.
So how do you know it's more expensive then?
Well, I'm just saying,
Go to
anytime you move
VDOT
dirt.
VDOT standards are always more expensive. Is that your question? Absolutely. They're going to be more expensive because it's, because it's more of an engineered specification. Gravel road with, is basically rock on rock. Okay, is the best way to describe it. And so, if you're taking a gravel road, I'm just talking straight gravel without getting, from, and well, maybe that's a good example to look at right there. I mean, I think the best way to look at these is to look at examples and go, all right, it's very clearly, if you take a VDOT road to the back lot, that is going to be an expensive proposition as compared to a simple gravel road that's a private road.
But the question, this is a 6-inch compressed aggregate base. I mean, is that a simple with the grade and the ditches and everything? So I think it would be good, because we get this all the time. This has been like an ongoing thing, like no one wants to build a road to state standards. So it's this constant thing.
This is, are you saying, but this is for the private road?
Yeah, but what we're getting at is the reason we're doing this is because there's a perception that it's so overburdensome and so expensive to build the road to state standards that no one can sell these lots and they're in financial jeopardy. And these lots are worthless if they have to build a road to public standards. I mean, that's
Josh,
what.
do you know what the VDOT standards are?
They're very similar to those, but they can also change over time. So
I don't know what the current VDOT.
Right, so we're looking at the secondary street requirements and we're at.
Is that where, okay, so
Right.
you're talking about
And we're-
your basic subdivision, so think about a subdivision that's already developed.
Yeah.
That is, the VDOT's taken over somewhere, so it's, they own it, right, they're maintaining it. That sort of construction compared, I guess, we used to have that, right, I mean, is that what you're, is that what you're?
I'm not
getting
trying
at?
to put you on the spot.
No, I'm not sure what your question
Well,
is.
here's let me lay out so here's the deal, like, let's just take this as an example.
Okay,
And let's say this is the issue that precipitated this whole discussion.
right,
This landowner has talked to someone and has basically said, I can't build homes on here because it's too expensive to build the public road. And I can't sell them and I can't pass the cost on to the homeowners. And therefore, I want the standard lowered. Am I right? Because these lots are not valuable now because I have to build a public road. I can't sell them, I can't make money on it, I can't
well, that's
implement.
because the number of lots that are there, I mean, it's a little different when it's fewer lots.
Right.
The more lots you have, sort of the notion is, yeah, that's a great
So we
example.
could put this up as this is sort of the other end of it. This
Yeah.
is the low end of 3, this is the
Yeah.
high end of
But
9.
that'll be cheaper per lot. than a road.
Absolutely, and that's why I was talking about mobilization costs. I mean, the construction costs are gonna vary. Now, this property, on the other hand, is not flat, has the issues Mr. Yancey's talking about related to the gradient changes, potentially saturated soils near that creek. I mean, this is gonna be a higher development expense proposition, not just because it's longer, but because of what it is.
And you haven't gotten to wetland issue
Sure.
potentially.
Well, so I'm not gonna belabor this, but I mean, like, I get, me personally, like, it gets old every time we set a standard and someone gets burdened by the standard and then we lower the standard. And there's no evidence that if the landowner had to actually build the road to public standards, that he wouldn't be able to sell the lots.
Yeah, that's a different issue than whether or not you should lower the standards. Right. Look, if you ask me, I mean, look at this. What do you think we should do here for
It
this?
should be it should be built to VDOT standards, like 100%, absolutely.
Right.
And then the reason I asked the last applicants the specific question I did is because people come in and buy these and they assume it's a public road and the real estate agents tell them all sorts of nonsense. And then they buy it and they find out they've got a crappy road that they're investing money in forever. You know, and these were educated folks that they didn't know they couldn't have horses. And like we're expecting people who buy homes to know all these nuances about roads. I mean, particularly people coming from Fairfax, they don't have this private road stuff. Like VDOT takes care of the roads. So, you know, you're saying, hey, because the developers come and said, you know, I can't sell these lots because this road's too expensive, I'm gonna push it off on the people who buy the homes. And I'm gonna burden them with it. And at some point, I'm gonna burden the county with it, and I'm gonna burden the state taxpayers with it. And my point is we ought to make the developer build the public road. That's my point, and I'm done with it.
All right,
Mr. Brooks,
Mr. Johnson, is there anything else you want to include?
Mr. Brooks, I would like to say one comment
Okay.
in relation to that. The road maintenance agreement requirement clearly stipulates that it is not to be a public responsibility in perpetuity. Essentially, it is the responsibility of private owners, subject to that agreement, to maintain.
Have you ever been involved in homeowners associations that maintain roads?
Absolutely.
And the fights that I mean, there's entire neighborhoods that they won't even talk to one another over these issues.
I totally understand. There are people on either side of the fence.
No, I'm saying like the people.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
relating, there are also people on two sides of a shared fence that won't maintain the fence together. I know.
Right, so like all we're doing is creating this chaotic situation for people who will eventually buy these homes, and then we're burdening the county. And it chafes me that this was presented as being all positive.
Mr. Nichols, go ahead.
What do you mean it's all positive? I mean, it's not all positive.
Well, I want to make sure I understand something. We're not requiring, the county's not requiring any VDOT. They may require, you could require it to be constructed VDOT standards, but they're not, VDOT's not going to maintain it.
That is absolutely correct.
So let's be clear, you know, that we're saying to the private property owner, you not only have to maintain it, build it at VDOT standards, you have to maintain it to those standards.
But you can turn it over to VDOT.
No, that's not what
You can't anymore.
Nope.
That was my question. There's no guarantee to go to VDOT.
That's exactly what the situation is. So VDOT is not taking these roads.
Right, anymore. Usually, if you built a VDOT standard, pretty much you could, when the VDOT rep came to the board meeting, you could say, in your next 2-year plan, would you include this? And they would do all they could to include. Right now, the kickback is what I'm hearing VDOT saying, no, we can't get the state to buy this because we're broke.
And here's the deal, VDOT's completely different than almost every other state DOT. So when I ran the DOT in Indiana, I didn't have this problem because I didn't have local streets. It was maintained by the locality. So there's a big difference. In fact, the statute in Indiana said you can only have 12,000 miles of road under state control in the state of Indiana. There's an absolute limitation. So VDOT is an anomaly. Now there are a couple other states, you know, that have similar situations. But I just want everybody to understand. And by the way, I did live in Fairfax prior to moving down here full time, and we did not have VDOT control. We had a private subdivision in Fairfax, and we dealt with it. You know, I mean, I was sitting there going, we need to seal the cracks so the road doesn't break up, and we had to spend some money to do that. So I guess what concerns me is what concerns me is the intent of how we look at roads that are going onto these lots. And that we have to understand that the burden we put on, if you think the burden is under the owner, it's buyer beware. Okay,
Amen.
I mean, you have to understand that. So it is buyer beware, and if you know that the county is requiring, up to VDOT standards, then you're gonna know that. But if the county does not require, VDOT to take it over, there's no guarantee of that. And I guess I'm just trying to sort of go, what is the crux of our issue here? Is it, do we want to accept the private road standards with the change? And really the issue is, the load bearing aspect.
And the surface.
And the surface, right? So that's really where the expense comes in, with the asphalt.
So.
All right, so we need to move
Hold
on.
on. So buyer beware, so are we gonna allow people who bought these lots after the code was, like you said someone called about a subdivision that was platted in 1979. So are we saying that if someone buys a subdivision today, under this code, that we're not gonna do buyer beware there?
They would have to construct a road to get a building permit to the private road standards that are in here.
But not the public road. So if someone bought this in 2019, we're not gonna do buyer beware. We're gonna tell them that, hey, you get to not do buyer beware.
Well, I think that's a technical issue about the whole subdivision.
It's not a technical issue, and I can tell you why. Now, use this example right here. Say this road, or this parcel that has this alleged road in it. If the neighbor on the backside of that parcel used that road for 20 consecutive years, that person has right of egress across it in perpetual.
Yeah, but that's
Sure, but
a different
that's
issue.
not.
No, it's not. It's, for example, platted. If it's platted and I purchase it, it's like he says, it's buyer beware. And I think Mr. Slayton will tell you back here in his practice of law, he's come across more things than you can say grace over that are unexpected and convoluted.
Man, that's pretty bad. Well, you can't say grace over it.
I recognize Mr. Slayton back there.
So, it's an issue that, there's so many things that are unknown that you can't cover all the bases.
What
That's
I'm
my
asking,
point.
Okay,
what I'm
so,
asking though is, if this changed hands, so let's say someone bought this in 2019, this code was in existence. Surely they knew they had to build a public road. Because it says it right here.
Sure.
So like, are we gonna let them off too?
So the transaction doesn't matter, it's when, it's when it was recorded, and so
that's
in
what I was
this,
getting to, is a technical issue. It's
We
recorded,
didn't
it's
have
not
road, we
recorded.
didn't have road standards when it was recorded.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, all right.
You and I, we're
Okay.
putting these on.
Hey, gentlemen, lady, are you finished?
yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have anyone signed up for the public comment side?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we're gonna open the public comment and, we're gonna ask you to come forward, state your name. I was gonna give you 3, but I give you 5, because I know you can't do what you're gonna do. With all you heard, so put 5 minutes and, we'll move on. State your name and any group you're affiliated with.
Robert Slayton, I'm here on my own. It's 110 Box City Lane, Orange is my address. The zoning ordinance is an ordinance passed, started in 1968 when the state required it. Other than that, there wasn't. I've been just trying to deal with some questions I know the answer to. And I envy you all for trying to fix this problem because it's a major problem. My problem is I believe that the ordinance, the previous planning ordinance, is unconstitutional because I believe it's a taking. It's requiring two things that they've done. They build these roads to certain specifications, and second, that they get a road maintenance agreement. You try to get a road maintenance agreement with 20 people on a road, you're never gonna get all of them to sign it, I can tell you that. It makes sense when you're developing one and prospectively in the future to do that. But in the past, there's no, I've seen roads where there's 3 people up front who have a prescriptive right of way. There's a road, there is a platted easement in the back, which actually doesn't ever touch the road. It has a road maintenance agreement on it. And then behind that, there's 6 other houses. I mean, that's what you're dealing with. My concern is that if you take a vested right that somebody has received, if this, well, one of these subdivisions, that person paid to, but that person paid to have a surveyor go out there and plat that subdivision. He paid to probably have perked, although the perks would probably have expired. He had it staked. He may have done some work, but not all of the work. So he has a vested right in what he has been given based on what the standards were. Now, I can't remember. It's only been about 10 years or maybe 12 years that the county has required with a plat that it be signed, maybe longer that the plat has been signed, but it's been about that long that the county has required that there be a road maintenance agreement, which is probably a pretty good thing. Problem is they do require that sometimes when there are already existing roads, which is almost impossible to do. So my concern, I think it's a previous platted lots. I think if it read with respect to any subdivision platted that was, I would say recorded, because I think you have to take out approved. A lot of these plats for subdivision were recorded long before they would ever have to be approved by the county. In Orange County prior to the April 24th, 2018, and shows roadways which are designed which are designated as private roads. I just put roadways because at one point, I don't think they were even designated private roads. For a long period of time, you got the surveyor to go out there and plat it, and you took it to the courthouse with your deed, and maybe a deed of dedication if you had one, and you recorded it. There are nightmares in Orange County with these things. Part of Orange Lake Road, it's the devil to try. It's the devil to try to get a bank loan because there are incomplete road maintenance agreements out there. The banks will require road maintenance agreements. There's lots of things we'd like to have, but we have these roads. Some of these roads have been subdivisions been there 20, 30, 40 years or longer. Maybe have 2 or 3 houses, or as Mr. Brooks said, if the way it's addressed, sometimes if you're number 3, you're stuck. You're the one that gets it. So I think it ought to be, if it's platted, if it's recorded, you ought to be able to build it at whatever specifications were there at the time that existed. You shouldn't be required to increase specifications. And I always love to bring up, Mr. Johnson will understand this, state maintained roads at 655 is an exception, I would hope. Many of you all been out at 655. I used to live out there. It's not a good dog path, but it's a state road. And we require a lot today. And I think prospectively looking forward, some of your suggestions are very good because Mr. Capel was saying, the person that develops this thing he's the one that's gonna make the money on it. But, and he needs to plan for that to make sure that these roads are built. But the problem you've got is, this lot, that one had about 8 or 10, that's right. The one had 8 or 10 lots on it. Those 8 or 10 lots may have been sold. Mr. Brooks may have bought one from Fairfax 10 years ago. I'm going to build my house out there in 5 years and retire. The quote, the developer is long since gone on these roads. But my concern is just to make somebody do something now for something that was platted before would be unconstitutional, both under the state and federal constitution. Anybody have any comments? Like I said, I've been doing this. The only thing that's worse than this is well lots. Thank God those is gone, but it's a problem in the county. I'll give it to that, but I don't think this is the fix for it because I think it requires them to do things that you're not going to be able to do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Well,
Mr. Brooks,
hold on 1 second.
can you ask him if he's in favor or against this?
Well,
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
We're not supposed to question the public. I don't care if you do it now, just remember that they come up, they make their presentation, and they sit down. But Mr. Slayton, I've been around here a minute, and go ahead and do it. I'm just telling you, that's an exception I'm making, because we're not supposed to question the person. So you go with a quick question, you go with a quick question, and then we're done.
I would agree that there needs to be a previously platted section that just simply says, as I said, with respect to any subdivision platted that was recorded in the Orange County Circuit Court prior to April 28, 2018, which shows roadways which are designated, such roads may be constructed. I mean, I think that would be the appropriate way to do it, because that would be a clarification of, I think, some questions that come up now about when the third person and when the 11th person comes in and builds. It's that they are there.
Yeah, I really was just trying to not ask him a question and get his opinion. I just want to make sure I understood what his testimony was. And I believe.
His comment.
Or whatever, his comment, his public comment, which was, you believe that the words "was approved" should come out, all right? And you believe that the word "private" in front of roads should come out.
Yes.
And you believe that there should be a period after the word "constructed" and everything after that struck.
Correct.
Okay, because that is the constitutional issue that you're saying. If we were to put that in, we would have a constitutional issue, in your opinion.
In my opinion.
Okay, that's what I really wanted to
Okay,
get.
all right, that's fine, thank you. It's not our practice to,
No, I know.
public comes up to question them, because at
Yeah.
times, someone will come up with, we'll ask them, where in the world you get that from, and we really can't do that. With him, it's a little bit different.
No,
So I'll play a little
I
exception.
respect that, Mr. Chairman. I just-
All right, you're fine, I'm just, as chair, sometimes I have to make decisions that are not always nice. So, here's what is there anyone else signed up for public comment? Do we have the information from the Piedmont Environmental? Didn't they have something to say about this one? Was that the other one?
No, sir, that was for this. That's what I was asking, if you
That's
wanted
it.
it read into the record or
I don't
just
need it
recognized.
read if you just place it into the record by, just handing it to the clerk.
Did that get disseminated? Because I don't recall.
I don't remember that.
I did not get a copy of it.
I'm not seeing.
My
Okay, well
apologies.
then, we don't need to read that into the record then if we didn't disseminate it. I thought you said you had disseminated it.
I thought that it had been, I apologize.
Okay.
Sorry.
How long is it?
It's one page and one paragraph of the second part of the
Let's
second.
start to read.
Okay, it's gonna take,
You don't have it either?
it's gonna take me a minute to get it.
Don't,
So,
well,
What
just,
day was it emailed?
can you make sure you email out to every commissioner and then can you insert that into the record?
verbatim.
Because I'm gonna have a suggestion here in just a second that we don't, make any action on this tonight. I'm gonna suggest that we take what we've got, massage it over, and then act at a later time. But I think if that's the consensus of the commission, that's what I would like to do. I guess we're gonna have to, for logistic purposes, we're gonna have to table it until our next meeting. But that's what I'm gonna suggest that we do. But before we get to that point, we're gonna close the public comment side, and then we're going to, we have any questions again for Josh that we haven't asked already?
I mean,
You do, go ahead, go
well,
ahead,
I mean, I just want to follow up on some of the things that I asked.
go ahead, follow.
I heard a public speaker say that the county didn't start signing plats until 10 to 12 years ago.
I can tell you I've seen plats signed in the early 2000s. So I don't know when the practice began, but I know I've seen plats that are close to 20 years old that have subdivision agent of Orange County on it. I can find others, but I think, I mean, something like that. Now, whether I can find the same thing in the 80s, most likely not.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand, because,
Yeah, it started at some point.
yeah, because, you know, I think that's an important piece, because the way this is framed, and then I don't even know about I'm not a constitutional lawyer, I've said this 50 times, but like, you know, if I just showed up at the court and filed a piece of paper, that's now a right. And then if I have to like, how do we do building code changes? Like, do we have to go back to the building standards back when they intended to build the home? I mean, like, a lot of this doesn't make sense. Whenever I hear sort of the Constitution kind of thrown out, and this is unconstitutional, and it's like, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
If you own a property, you have a right in that property depending on the ownership interest that you have. So yes, I mean, that is sort of the essence of the, is that a fair statement?
Well, there are two things governing whether you have vested rights. One is the Fifth Amendment and one is the state code section. Y'all can look up, I can send it to you. It's 15, 2, 23, and 7. But basically, there are two ways you can vest rights. One is by actually building something. You actually build the road. Once you've built the road, if you were in compliance with standards at the time you built it, then even if those standards change, you can keep the road the way it was.
Got it.
The other way, the state code is kind of opt into enhanced vested rights. And the other way is you have to have a significant governmental act, and it has to be more than just a plat.
Right.
It has to be something much more than that. So a plat is not gonna, it's not gonna guarantee you vested rights.
Right.
But
So
if you
then-
would spend a lot of money on, let's say, obtaining a SUP from the planning commission, and then after you grant it, after you get the SUP, you rely on it to spend money building what you authorize. That's a vested right under the state code.
So I'm not arguing people don't have rights. What I'm saying is, so you just said if they had built the road, but many of these don't have a road built. And all we have is a plat, which you just said is not a right.
That's right.
So, this whole constitutional thing starts to fall apart because it wasn't a vested right in the first place. They didn't build the road. All they have is a plat. Many potentially don't even have subdivision signatures on it. So, so the whole argument starts to kind of.
No, hold up just a little bit. Let me see if I can help you. 'Cause once the county enacts an ordinance, it makes an act. If it's overdue and burdensome on you, irregardless of whether your plan is accurate or not, once the county says, we're gonna start doing this, you can't just harm folks in doing it. In other words, you can't say everybody got a brick home, a 3,500 square foot, and this is what we're doing. If you don't, we're gonna tear your house down. And I know that's a little bit exaggerated, but what I'm saying is that once the county enacts something, had we not done any of this at all, no Constitution would apply. I mean, it would apply, but it wouldn't apply for this. So, but once the county did something, it could be infringing. I'm not saying whether it is or not, I'll just disclaim I'm not worried either. It could infringe on rights that were already established by either by thought or whatever. You just can't arbitrarily do something and say, okay, poof, there it is. But let's back up a little bit. The thing that Mr. Johnson said that makes clear to me, and I think we lost along the way today, is that as it respects to this, irregardless whether it's constitutional or not, and both lawyers have said we're running into constitutional issues. When you get two lawyers telling you that you're probably running into constitutional issues, trust me, we're probably running into constitutional issues. It's just because they just kind of got the feel of it. What Mr. Johnson said that makes sense to me is we got to make a determination whether we want to let everybody before 2018 do what they were doing and let them be like they were, or we don't. And anything after 2018 would have to comply with the new rules that we apply for roads at that time. And that's where we are.
But Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. What we're allowing them to do is build a private road instead of a public road.
Under this change.
But they still have to build the private road to the current standards.
Correct.
They can't build it they're not building it to a private road standards from 1988.
That is what is proposed here.
That's what's proposed. That's
So
what
the
we're saying.
only thing this is putting in place is you don't, because at the time that you platted this subdivision, you didn't have to have a public road. You could use a private road. We're allowing that right
To stay.
to stay.
That's right.
But private roads back then, you could probably just run a truck down through there, and it probably didn't even need a bulldozer.
Could be a
You just dump
kickback. Just a
dump
kickback.
some number one gravel on there, and you're good to go.
Right.
Now you gotta build it to these standards.
After anything that was, platted after the 2018.
Which one of the two lawyers says is unconstitutional? So like, this is my point, so like,
Well,
so, you know, so like, all I'm saying
I
is.
just said both lawyers brought up the constitutional issue.
I don't,
One lawyer said if we require anything other than what was there at the time they did it, that would be
Construction standard.
unconstitutional, right? So, you know, it's like,
His public comment was you should delete, if I understand it, you should delete the requirements. You still can require that a road, or
he
roads
deleted,
may be constructed, but he's saying you can't require, you really shouldn't require them to do it at a certain standard because that would be a unconstitutional taking.
right, that's, yeah, exactly. So we're,
So there again, I'll go back to,
I mean, that's a good public comment.
That's how
I'm not saying it
I was gonna
isn't,
say,
I'm just saying that.
whether he's right or wrong, I think that's something I'm gonna ask Mr. Langston to research and give us, if he can find case law and things like that, so substantiate your position on it with the understanding of what another bar associate has said. I mean, I respect, I watched this for 29.5 years. One lawyer say this, one lawyer say that, and then there was a judge in the middle. And so, who would they say is a burnt out lawyer? So I'm just telling you, it's kind of how it rolls. So I'm not saying, but I think what your help to us would be if the board, the commission so desires to help us with continuing this, is that see if you can find case law out there on what you believe you have substantial finding. And what Mr. Slayton says, there'll be some help there too. And then I think it'll help us all, because virtually, and then I think that there'd be some clarity, if I'm hearing commissioners right, there has to be some clarity, and what this action that the board is asking us to do is asking us to do. In other words, I think there's some confusion, because I'm totally confused, because I thought that you were saying that if that third person bought that lot, you're gonna make him build that road. And I'm lost on that, because I think that's wrong. I think that is a taking. That's a heck of a taking, especially if I bought the 8th lot in and I gotta build a road all the way back. So I think with everything that's been said tonight, I think that Josh, you have some work to do. Eric, you have some work to do. And then I think the commission really has to come back together and knock this around a little bit. When is a good time for us to continue this to, if the commission wanted to do it? And don't say September. 'Cause
I mean, getting road construction costs is pretty straightforward, and it can be produced in a couple days.
Okay.
Legal research,
That won't take very long at all.
So we can do this in September. What's on the September agenda?
well, we don't have a September 2nd agenda right now.
We're gonna have one.
September,
Say again?
September 2nd is in 2 weeks.
That's correct. We don't have any other agenda items, so
Can you do all that in 2 weeks? That's the Labor Day weekend though, isn't it?
It's
before. Yeah.
Thursday before that.
Right. I mean, what's the consensus here? Somebody else, we had a
well,
lot.
we need to get a motion, but the other thing, like, to me, there's multiple layers to this, like a subdivision that's partially built. Like, that's way different than a subdivision that hasn't been built.
So what I'm gonna ask you to do, and I was gonna ask you to do it anyway, but I was trying to get the dates together. Not just you, every commissioner that has a question specific to like what you're saying, get those to the attorney and the county, to Josh, and get it out so that we can, and, dispense with it with all of us, but just get it out so we can work on it and see where it is, because I think you brought some real good issues up, and as well as everybody. What's the root cause? What are we talking about here? And then let's see if we can't hash through this. I just don't know that we can do it that quick.
Right.
I just don't know we can do all that done that quick, get it out to everybody and get in a fashion that it's researched and done well. But if you think you can, go
What do you
ahead.
want the motion to say, Mr. Chairman? Defer till when?
That's what I'm asking. I'm kind of trying to figure out how long it's gonna take us to do the work to get it deferred to.
Mr. Chair, Chair, may I make a suggestion?
You can.
There's a presentation I gave a couple of years ago that goes through the ins and outs of 54-121 and how it applies. And I think the commission may find that helpful in terms of determining what this amendment really means.
Sure.
Because it would be helpful to understand what the unamended version means and then understand how the board is proposing to build on it.
And you gonna give that into Donald Brooks' understanding, or you'll give it to him legal understanding?
He did a whole
My
presentation.
recollection from the feedback that I received
It was pretty good.
was
I
that
can't remember, I know
at
you
the
did.
time I gave it, was it took a very complex concept and made it very easy.
Yeah, he put
So
like a
that's-
one
that's certainly
page
my goal.
paper together.
So if you can do that, that would be helpful to us
I
also.
remember.
That's
That's why I'm
push
surprised. This is-
that's fine, yes, sir.
So respectfully, Mr. Chair, that presentation with Mr. Lansing's agreement, I would propose publishing on the website, because this is a matter of some public interest, and certainly Mr. Slayton and others may have some interest in it. I don't see any reason not to publish it online, and if you're okay with that, I think it would have been in the record of the planning commission at the time, so. Okay, so I would propose that.
So what's the date, Mr. Capel's postured for a motion, but I need to know the date that we can get to. How quick does the board want this, Mr. Johnson?
Oh, I think you all need to, I don't believe there's nothing hanging fire. This is not, I mean,
There are pending transactions where people are hoping that the board will modify the code that will allow them not to build public roads or some
but
of the
if they,
miles
I mean,
put up.
certainly a couple of weeks or, I don't think it's problematical. This is a problem that's, decades in the making, so.
Why have we not seen any of them here? Why wasn't one of the options, if they're stacked up, to come to the public, to come to the planning commission?
But I think Mr. Slayton verified that he's already seen the problem
For years.
for years, and it just it's festered to the point that now all of a sudden it's come to a head.
So I want to understand your question. You're asking why hasn't an individual case come forward and requested a waiver?
Right.
To Mr. Lansing's point, we have pointed them to the sections of the code that said you have to have a unique circumstance and a hardship that has to be warranted under this code, and if it doesn't meet that test, then we're going to recommend to the
They won't allow the
commission.
business.
Well, we're going to recommend to the commission that we find at least as a staff that this is the test applied. We don't believe it meets it. Obviously, the commission can vote differently.
And there have been waiver applications over the past couple of years. It's just that this commission has denied them, appropriately so.
I think they've approved a couple, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, there have been several that have come forward.
So, I mean, we have spoken with people about bringing them forward, and we have not told them, no, you have no chance. We have told them, this is the test that you have to, you have to pass. And dissuaded people to not come forward
And
in
someone-
the 5 months I've been here.
And someone actually has to file a complaint. Like if we approve one and we waive it, like someone else has to actually file a lawsuit
Right.
in order to test whether, which, I mean, maybe that'll happen, I don't know. So,
Okay, what timeframe do you think, Mr. Gillespie?
I would propose to come back in 1 month instead of 2 weeks. But that puts you at your second meeting in September.
We'll take it
which you're
second week of
indicating.
September. I'll take it.
make a motion to defer to the second meeting in September.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We'll take it to the second meeting in September, which is September the
16.
16th. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously.
And just one final comment. We need to relook at that. Whoever's decided that the first lot owner has to buy the road, like, we need to relook at that. Whoever's made that decision, I mean, if that's what's going on in the county, like, that, someone needs to look at that and fix that, because that is, there's gotta be a better answer than that.
The first lot is to buy the road.
Well, that's basically what they said, is the first person that buys a lot and builds the home has to pay for the whole road.
Third. So that, what we were saying is the first that triggers the next level up in the scale is the one that has to make the improvements up to the next level.
For all the rest of the road.
Right.
Yeah, so I think someone needs to revisit that. That doesn't make sense at all.
But for those plots, like, let's say that you bought the furthest one away from the road, like, you still need to make a road to
Correct.
your home if you're the first builder, so then the first person's paying for the whole road, and then the other two that come in,
Yeah.
they don't have to pay for it?
I understand.
I can elaborate on that in
Okay.
a presentation
Okay.
on September 2nd.
Well, right, and so why, yeah, and so, again, the ones that are already built on is one thing, but new ones, why is the person who owns the land that's selling the lots not on the hook to put the road in?
So he's asked,
Whether it's gravel or whatever.
all right, hold on, we're going to end this one because we moved it. So he's asked those two questions. Josh and Eric, please answer those questions in your presentation somehow.
Sure.
Okay? And that will let us move along here because we're, not that we have to get home at a certain time, but we've already moved that to our second meeting. Thank you, commissioners, thank you, public, and thank you, staff, for what you've done. Now we're gonna ask Mr. Whip to come with a presentation half as long as he will do it first. Use your last name and whip it out real quick for us. Thank you, sir.
The rest of us have stayed around.
And while he's trying to get together, if I offended anybody by cutting them off, I didn't mean to, I just felt we just gotta move on.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Look at that, Mr. Brooks.
We just gotta move on. Julie wrote up here, hurry them up, Donald.
Yeah. No, but it is really
That's-
confusing.
It gets very confusing. Then you forgot what you remembered.
All right, well, first of all, good, thank you guys so much for having me, members of the commission. A few of you I know, a couple of you I do not know. My name is Jim Lipp, I'm the GIS analyst for the county. And this evening, I'm gonna go briefly through the county's semi-new open data portal. It's been out for, we published it last spring. I think it's a really excellent public resource that allows for, very much transparency and goes along with the board's digital citizen service initiative. And I'm also going to go through the updated GIS parcel viewer, tax parcel viewer as we call it. And I just have a couple slides and I'll dive right into the demonstrations, the fun part. So basically, the open data portal is really going to be almost a catalog of all of our GIS layers that are publicly available for folks to view, to download, to see in a spreadsheet, to use in public software or free software that they may have to view data such as Google Earth. If they have QGIS, they can do that as well. And even if they have some of the Esri suite of products available too. But by definition, open data is legal and technically open, meaning that anybody has access to it. And a lot of times I'll get, requests from college students or, engineering firms, environmental councils, what have you, saying, hey, can I get the latest copy of your parcel layer or anything like that? And it's a very simple request, but sometimes folks will get frustrated that, hey, they got to go through me and then, the whole rigmarole. But anyway, so the open data portal really is there to alleviate some of that and really wants to engage the public and bring in, geographic issues into context. But basically, like I said, it's a catalog of data. I've got a couple of screenshots here, but we have, so basically we have about 50 data sets that are available. So anything from tax parcels to zoning, what have you, anything like that. And they can view all of these on the open data portal and not have to, have their own software if they don't have it. And I'm briefly going to go through the tax parcel viewer as well. Basically, most of you know that right now we're using the web logistics software through Timmons Group. It's a good piece of software in that it does what it's supposed to do. However, there's a few search functionalities in there that'll frustrate end users because it's not as intuitive as it could be. So we've made some improvements on that as well, and that's going to launch on September 1st of this year. So we've been working on that the last few months, and we've rolled it out to staff internally here for them to use it there, get their feedback. I've been very gracious with them because it is a big transition, and I appreciate their patience. It's going through the process with them, and some of their, processes will be modified a little bit. I'll get right into it with the demos. While I'm pulling that up. So basically, our open data portal right now is on the county's website. If I go to the county's website, right now we have our GIS map button here, which will take you to web logistics. Our goal is eventually this button here is going to basically be replaced, and will not be replaced, but the link itself that you hit when you engage the button is going to take you to the open data portal. But right now, our open data portal, as it currently exists, lives the information technology page. That's where I am. If I go to GIS information and then go to the open data portal, this will open up for us. So it's basically just a web interface. And we have a nice description, about what it is, the functionality of it, its initiative. But as we scroll to the bottom here, this is where, everybody wants to see all the fun parts. So basically what we've done is we've taken all of our data layers and we have categorized them into, different categories. So if I'm a college student and I'm like, I'm curious about the zoning, do they have a layer? Is it publicly available, whatnot? I could go into this application and just type zoning, and I can see here we've got two data layers, town zoning and county zoning. So I'm going to hit zoning here. And as I do that, it is going to pull in all of the zoning for orange. Now it's not color coded because it's not, it's not meant to show specific values in the way it's presented here. But as I can see here, I can click around and see some of the different values that we have here. I'll get a nice pop-up that'll show me any statistics in here. So this particular plot or piece of land I've clicked on is zoned as R2. But really, the fun stuff is going to be, hey, I'm interested in filtering out the data and looking at specific data sets that I can look at. So for instance, if I wanted to go in to this data set and filter out, only areas that are zoned as R2, I can do that. And then now that I've got it filtered to a specific data set that I'm looking at, I can go into the download button here and I can download, I have my toggle filters here, so I can toggle this and it's found 25 records that are zoned as R2. Now keep in mind, it's not 25 instances, it's 25 different pieces of the county that are all within that one area. But like I said, if you want to download a tabular view, you can do that by downloading a CSV. If you're a Google Earth fanatic and you like KMLs, you're more than welcome to download KML and do that, which is a great resource because it's free and anybody can use it. And then if you have your own, higher end software such as QGIS or the Esri suite of products such as ArcMap, you can download shape files and go from there. Again, you can view the information not only spatially, but in a tabular method too. So right here, I've got all my zoned R2 records. And then if I filter this out, I'll take it back to the map. Well, this is just for the download, but if I go back to the filter and I check off my filter, everything will pop back. So you can do this for any one of the data layers that we make available on here. And like I said, there's over 50 or so. But one of the things that we do besides providing the individual layers is we also have a link to featured applications. So this link is going to take us to all the different GIS-based applications that the county has. So obviously we have some stuff for COVID response, economic development. Some of you have maybe seen the Polling Places Initiative app. We have the Timmins Web Logistics one is down here too. But, so as we increase our capability and staff comes up with new ideas to put in some of these new initiatives for innovative applications, they will eventually be housed in this location.
Does that have population density?
It does not. None of these do in their current format.
Will the new one?
It can, yes, sir. Especially, some of the census information coming out, this year. That's certainly some layers that we can add once that's all finalized. But yeah, and that's.
Is that something you're looking at to do?
Yes, sir, eventually. And I think too, one of the looping back is one of the things that we struggled with in the time that I've been here in my 2.5 years here is that people view GIS as the web logistics viewer, and it's so much more than that. And we'll get comments like, oh, I'm on GIS and all this and that, and they technically are, but GIS is a powerful suite of specific built applications that have functionalities such as dashboards, viewers, anything like that, from a web perspective, as well as the surface layer where it's, a spreadsheet where you're, appending some data into some shape files and you have attribute values and whatnot. So, and I think we've done a good job since I've been here of showing that capability, at least, internally to our staff here, within various departments that, it's not just paper maps anymore, which is a big component of it. But that's really the ins and outs of the open data portal. I'll shift into our new parcel viewer, which is going to, like I said, replace the current viewer that we have now, September 1st. So basically, it's going to have all the same functionality with a little bit of improvements here and there. But one of the things that we run into a lot is, I'm sure if you use the current GIS, web viewer, it's very tax parcel driven, which rightfully so. But if you have a parcel and somebody's trying to find, look up, a convenience store or something like that, where you have a parcel and has maybe 20 different addresses on it because it's got multiple storefronts. If they try and enter that storefront address into the search, it's not always going to yield a return because the current viewer is tied to the tax parcel address. And that's been one of the big hindrances, I think, of the current viewer. And now that we're bringing all of this internally and hosted, with our own department and whatnot, we have the ability to change layers, add searches, do simple things like naming conventions and symbology that, quite frankly, we could do, but it just took a lot more time because we had to go through a few more people that weren't on our end. So, for instance, again, it's a good viewer, but just real quick, one of the things that we see if I'm going to search for, just to show you, if I can spell this evening. So in this example, I'm going to look up the parcel of the new public safety buildings and beyond. It's Government Center Drive, and as I type in government, obviously, it is dynamic in that as I start to type, it'll start to filter out, things that are entered in, tied to the parcel, tied to the address point. So in this instance, we can see it's found 2 hits for what I'm looking for. It's searching by the address point, and it's also hitting on the parcel address because in this instance, they're both the same. So if I click the parcel address, it's going to take me there. I will change the base map so you all can see it a little bit better. In this instance, it is taking me to the parcel. It has all the information here, just abbreviated. That would be on the property card. But what folks are, when they call me, it's people looking for, all the information they can get from the official property card, which in this instance is a quick link that says, hey, click here for property card link, more info, and it's going to actually take me to the property card that is maintained by the Commissioner of Revenue's office, upstairs, and they have all their, official on record information here, which is something a lot of folks really want to see. And then a quick other example of the previous instance that I just mentioned in the case of me trying to search for just a standalone, or not a standalone, but an address point that is on a parcel that is part of a larger group of address points on the parent parcel, is this instance here, where this 3247 Constitution Highway, if I zoom to that, it is basically, it's part of, there's, a structure here now, but at the time the aerials were taken, it wasn't. But as we can see, if I were to search for this in the old web viewer, you wouldn't find it because it's tied to the actual parcel and not the address point. So the point is that we're trying to make it more intuitive so folks, can just search, they can either hit our data points, they can hit, whether it be the address points or the parcel points, or they can use the Esri World Geolocator, which is basically anything you see in Google, Here Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, things like that. And it has all of our, normal layers that we can turn on and, do all that good stuff that we need to if we want to see what emergency service layer we're on and all that. But I don't like the transparency. I want to crank that, all the way down. It has all the buttons and whistles of a modern GIS viewer, which, quite frankly, I think this is, desperately needed. And it's going to be very exciting to roll out. I know some staff have been very excited for it. I've gotten a lot of good positive feedback, but it will be, obviously, I like to view GIS as being dynamic and that it's not static, it's always changing. So this is going to continually evolve for the good as we move on. That's basically the essence of what I have for you. I would be happy to field any questions, concerns, comments.
Any questions?
We'll go from there.
Any comments?
One comment. Thank you for your passion.
Yes, sir.
I can tell you are into geospatial data, so it's very cool. Good stuff. Look forward to trying it out.
I have a question about using the measuring, measurements. We had a different, thing come across that was like the 300-foot setback. One of the public comments was like measuring it and measuring, is it from the center of the road line or things like that. So how would you use the tools with this to figure out setbacks?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were doing a very, rough, estimate and not survey grade, depending on where you're measuring from, there is, obviously we have this measuring tool here. And one of the things that it does is you can measure by area, line, or point and get the coordinates. And you'd open the measuring tool. In this case, I'm gonna measure I'm gonna do edge of pavement to the parcel. So I'll go ahead and hit my line. I can choose what type of, unit I would like to measure, and I'll go feet. And then it's essentially just a point and a click, and it'll give you that information there. And we do have documentation for all of the widgets, step by step, that we're planning to link onto the application and go from there. So the public has, is armed with knowledge and.
Go back to your units. Does that say feet than US feet?
It does. It could be a duplication on mine.
What is the difference in feet and US feet? I was wondering, I saw it on there.
You know when you step to.
Oh, is that what it is? Is it us feet? Is it us feet or what? I mean,
Chairman Brooks, that's an easy question answered. US feet are better than any other feet. That's just,
apparently,
it's not hard to answer.
Apparently, I'm just curious, what was the difference in it?
It's a good question. It could be a duplication in the widget itself. I will look into
It only
it.
takes me to find that stuff, but it's just like. All right, thank you so much. You have any other questions? Yes, Josh.
Just a comment. I would like to say Jim Whip is a pleasure to work with since I came here. He's extremely capable. He's very competent. He has actually undersold some of the capabilities and the dynamism that he brings to this application. We will be using the products more and more. I'm very excited because it's a much easier interface. It's much easier on the eyes. As he said, it desperately needed a refresh. The question about the edge of pavement and the rights of way, much harder to interpret and kind of the fuzzy maps that have been the maps for a long time. And so I just want to give Jim a lot of credit for what he's doing and continue to do.
And I got one question and a comment. Jim, the old GIS, the lot lines were sometimes not very reliable.
Right.
Do you anticipate that these lot lines are gonna be, I know they're not gonna be perfect, but are they gonna be dialed in better than the other system?
Well, it will be, it's the same data set. However, it's one of those things where as we get notified of there's, inconsistencies, we address them as they come in.
Okay.
That's obviously our top priority. But it's really, as you know, we find out, you know, through recorded plats and whatnot.
It's quite fascinating. If you get around and mess around on our current GIS, you can see some major problems.
Right, you'll see a lot this big that says 22 acres.
Yeah,
Then you see a lot this big that says 8 acres.
yeah,
You're like, what measurement tool? That's why I thought
Yeah.
that US feet and the regular feet came in.
yeah. They were using different
I
ones.
thought they were using different feet.
My comment is that, you know, Jim is a treasure. He has been extremely helpful. He's been very helpful to FiberLink, in getting the broadband going. He really helped us get our hands around the data early on. Anything we asked him to do, he figured out a way to do it. And as I like to say, he even went out and wandered around in the woods at Barbersville one summer day, dodging hornets, to help us locate a tower out there. So, Jim's first rate. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir, so much. And I think compliments are well defined for you. Looks like to me when they do your evaluation, it's already done. Just don't play this.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, Josh, you have 4 things on this agenda. Planning development report. I want you prepared to do them in half the time you were going to do them. Mr. Johnson, you up next.
I have no comment.
Yeah, okay, Josh.
Sure.
He's not deferring his time to you though.
No, he's not deferring at this time, and I wouldn't take it. So, item number 1, Wilderness Crossing update. This is the rezoning. Came in earlier in the year. It went to the application review committee, ARC. We went back with their recent responses to the application review committee again this past Monday.
Thank you, sir.
They have requested a public hearing in September. So, if you're meeting on the 16th, that would be the earliest potential date for a public hearing. There are pending proper revisions or changes that we do not have yet, and we do not have all our comments together from Monday's ARC meeting. Again, that is what they have requested. So not to frighten anybody with that, but that's the path they want to be on, this earliest opportunity. I don't think I've reported in July or August in this body because we were kind of on and off again on trying to do agenda management and when the meetings were being held for first and second Thursdays, or first and second meetings. But there was a town hall meeting on this in the middle to the end of June. About 60 to 70 people attended, including 3 of our commissioners, incoming and outgoing from District 5, Hutchison, and Mr. Nickel. Julie was there as well. The level of public information on this case is very high. People are well informed. We have used this case as one of our first to be published on the online system with all the documentation that's there. It's been able to, administratively, I would not have been able to handle it with one person in a fairly large case like this without doing that. So there's a good level of public information. We don't know how many people to expect for the public hearing.
So let me ask you this before we get too far. Are there any previously platted subdivisions inside of this wilderness crossing that's already there that they're trying to resubmit for everything?
Not to my knowledge.
I thought you were actually asking a joke. No.
No,
There are-
that's the joke. The reason I ask you that,
There-
because if it is, I want to make sure that we have this roadway thing done first before.
There are a total of 20 parcels that are divided up in the assembled acreage, the 2,500 acres. But honestly.
So wait a minute, there's 20 parcels. Is that, they're complete parcels that have never been subdivided?
They were subdivided out of, the King's grants at some point.
I'm
and
not,
they are
that's not
today.
what I'm asking. Yeah, I'm
No, there are some roads, some existing roads within the development.
right.
And they'll have to go through the road abandonment process to either use or not use those roads, separate and a part of the zoning.
Keep going, I'm fine.
Sure. So the next step is, let's say 40 people do show up for a public hearing. We had hoped at one point that your September meeting and maybe worst case October meeting would be in the new public safety building. And at this point, we are as a county pushing that date back to December. I think that's when the board is first expecting to meet. Mr. Johnson, you want to corroborate that or?
I think it's gonna be December, possibly even January.
Okay.
So then we need to plan for not being here.
Correct.
That's the issue. Can we plan that within the next 2 weeks, or do we have to take them to October and then plan that for October? I guess the question is, do we think we have enough about the road or the September meeting to keep us there? Because Williams Crossing is not gonna be quick.
So my proposal would be to give you a briefing at your next meeting on the 2nd, to run through, and I'm getting a verbal briefing now, but to run through the facts of the case as we know them, which may have some changes in the days after that. But prepare to meet in TIAC most likely for your next meeting. And so that's why I bring it forward, regardless of where we are now. I don't believe this room is suitable for a public hearing with a subject of great interest.
Do you feel that we can do it on the September 16th meeting with everything else we got?
We can certainly
If
bring,
we wrap ourselves around this road like we did halfway, that's 2 hours right there. And then come back with Wilderness Crossing, that's a public hearing. I mean, we sitting there talking, will we continue the road one first and then take on the Wilderness Crossing, or we take on Wilderness Crossing and then continue the road one? I mean, just how much do we want to stack ourselves on one meeting? That's just a question. You all fall in line or whatever you believe you can do. I can stay to midnight. I don't have no curfew anymore, other than sleeping. If I fall asleep, wake me up. I mean, I just don't. I don't think you think it's, all I'm saying to you, if you put it on your September meeting, don't expect to leave out here before 10:30, 11 o'clock and starting at 6. 40 people, if you expect them to show up, you're talking 4 times 3. So you're talking an hour and a half of just public comment.
I'd be surprised if only 40 people showed up.
I'm just putting a low number on it, I know.
I would bet there'll be double that easy.
Yeah, I'm just.
Whether they all speak or not is another.
So well, if 80 show up and a third speak, you're still sitting at that 1 hour and a half, 2 hours threshold. Can we do all that and the roadway? Because I think the roadway is gonna bring more folks out at the continuation, even though the public comment is closed. I still think it's gonna be going, and I think it's gonna take us a minute at that. I really do. But that's just, I'm the guide. I'm not necessarily the pace setter.
So didn't we developed a calendar, right?
We did.
And like, so what's driving, I mean, I understand they requested it, but what does our calendar say as far as when
Should
they
be
should be?
October, first week in October, if we do it by calendar.
I mean, we have like a calendar and we said if X happens on this day, then it goes on this meeting. So why are we not just following the calendar? Would be my question.
May I speak to that? When the application was submitted, the date that it was submitted, we actually should have already had that meeting.
But they're
It was a
changed.
straight line path.
If it was a straight line
It was a
path,
straight line.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're already a month behind what they first anticipated.
But is that because of something they did or something we did?
It's both.
So, then I'm inclined to go to October. I'm just not, I don't hate to say it's first come, first served, that's kind of where we are here. I mean, I gotta take care of board action that they want something done on. And we moved that to September the 16th and for us to say we could just crowd one meeting night with everything. We've tried that before.
Yeah.
Tracy and Josh, and I don't know if y'all been here, and it just gets, you start losing people, they start fading, people don't give the entire attention to it. I mean, it's, the long meetings don't do anybody any justice.
Chairman Brooks, what I heard was that they haven't submitted everything. I mean, we've been through this, you know, it's like, oh, we'll schedule them for this public hearing, and they haven't submitted anything, but they said they would, and then like, and I'm not saying this applicant, but
In this
3
case-
nights before the meeting, it shows up, and then we're sitting here like, you know, I mean, they should be done, like, what are they gonna present, like, you know, I mean, that's my opinion, but.
So if they intend to submit some more documents that you have not received, irregardless where they're coming from or for what reason, then we'll go into the October meeting. If they're finished submitting and everything is done, then I might entertain to take it to the September 16th meeting. But if we're waiting on submissions, because we haven't got this package yet, nor have we got the packet for the response to the roadway. And I'll speak for every commissioner here, we got other things to do than spend 40, 50 hours trying to wade through what the attorney said, what the county man said, and then move into this. So let's be fair to the commissioners.
We can't do both of these on the same time.
It's no way possible.
I mean, I really don't think we do justice to.
To either one.
Now, how we decide to do it is a different matter, but
Yeah,
So what's the hope?
Tracy's just commenting that the application materials that we received have been posted for visibility, which again, I think is, gives credit to why the people at the public town hall meeting were well informed, plus the years of communication in the subject area, of course.
But it is in our GWAP,
Yes, sir, it is.
and so that makes it a little bit
Right.
criteria driven.
And the only thing that is newer, and the only other thing that could be newer than that, is we have received proposed proffered conditions last Thursday, which were discussed at the application review committee meeting on Monday. Those have not been published online and put on the website, so that is new. And then to the point about getting other new material, what I am expecting is revised proffered conditions and not any new documents. So the new document would just be a revision of what they've recently given us.
But other than what's published on the website, there's nothing been forwarded to the commission to preview as to take in consideration for their vote, either nay or yay. Am I correct on that?
To the full commission, that is correct.
That's right.
In the structure of the ARC plus GWA
That's
area
right.
members, those members have received the additional materials.
So let's just put it on October 2nd.
Okay.
And just tell them that we're just busy, and if they don't, tell them call me. You didn't have to take the, just tell them call me, I'll tell them why we did it.
Given the head of steam it took to get to this point in life, in terms of where they are in this application, 2 weeks is not a big deal.
Man, I don't think it's gonna hold down that much.
it's a 50-year plan.
It is for the area.
Couple
and-
weeks, what's it matter?
So, now, that said, I would propose to you that I have more of a graphical briefing, including all the proper conditions in some detail at your September 16th meeting. And so that way you have some preparatory information, and we don't have to get into that as much on the October 7th.
Okay.
It is October 7th, right?
7th, I'm sorry.
Why do I keep saying second?
Well, September 2nd.
Yeah, I keep, yeah, October 7th, I'm just keep saying that.
So that would be my proposal, and I'll do that with respect to the other business you have that evening.
Okay.
And to not shortchanging people that are attending on October 7th to hear it for the first time, but I think it will help.
Planning Commission Work Program.
Okay, Planning Commission Work Program. This was discussed by the three members that were present at your last meeting. I thought it was a good conversation. We received input from everyone, including our new commissioner. I'm going to put that into a graphic format, and I'd like to sort of begin to have that conversation offline of your meetings. So as I circulate it around, the goal is it would be published online as well. So it is your work program and your work plan. So I need an eye as to the appearance of it. Normally I'd set it up in an Excel spreadsheet type table and run with that. So I'm going to be looking for feedback on the items, the subject areas which we have, but also the format of it. That's pretty much it. So my intention is to circulate it offline, start to put it out for discussion and prioritization.
All right, bylaws.
So bylaws, call for in-person meetings, and we touched on tonight the protocol with Mr. Slayton, why it's important to remember all those bylaws. Mr. Nichols especially has read through them, and no particular issue on bylaws other than as we continue to be in a state of COVID, we have to be aware of the need to have our virtual meetings. We're not in a state of emergency, and that's really all I wanted to touch on there. And our bylaws do specifically, as we talked about many times in the last couple of months, refer to this building as your meeting location, and as we get into the next building and the next meeting location, we'll need to amend the bylaws. You'll need to amend your bylaws. And then also as to frequency, there had been a desire to have 2 meetings on a regular basis, and the second meeting be the more educational, informative discussion, non-case oriented business meetings. I
think that's still a great plan, but we do want to be respectful of your time and your service to your community and not expect to be meeting twice a month except as needed. And I think we're, in the circumstances that we demonstrated tonight, are proving why every 2 weeks may be needed to flush through certain items. And then lastly, the calendar meetings. I would suggest to the commission that at the end of the year, as the Board of Supervisors does, you look at the next year and we track through what the first and third Thursdays look like, and you begin to make some decisions if there are certain meetings you do not want to have or certain meetings you do want to have. And it's not changing your calendar in any way, but what I'd really like to do is publish a calendar of meetings for 2022 in December, January that you all vote on. That's not a major item, that's just anybody can go online and look at it.
All right, thank you, sir. Anything else?
Yes, thank you. So as it relates to the Digital Citizen Initiative and our customer-facing organization, we are hiring some positions within the Planning and Development Services Department. That includes a management level position for the Planning Services Manager, with Sandra Thornton's departure from that position, and with Barbara Crozier's retirement from her position in Building and Development Services. Those are key positions. Every position, it's my department, so I'll say it, every position in our department is a key position, but those positions are especially key. We're also adding 2 planner positions and a code enforcement officer. So one of those is coming back up to strength, and 2 of those are new additions.
Thank you for the code enforcement.
Yes, sir.
We need that.
Yeah.
Badly.
Okay.
And that is all.
Mr. Capel,
What's that, Commissioner?
you have some comments?
Yeah, I've got 2 of them. So, I know I interrupt. I know I throw things off, course, and I know people get frustrated because it's taking so long. But I get frustrated when things just kind of drop out of the sky. They're ill-formed, like we don't know all the data. Like I go back, I take the time to go and watch the discussion that's happening at the board, and I'm listening to them, and what they're saying isn't always correct, in my opinion. This whole issue of when the county actually signed these things and when we might really have a responsibility for them. We're told not to discuss things on email. We're told that we can't, have more than 2 people together to discuss it. This is the only format to discuss it. So if we want to not spend so much time, number one, why does the board this thing just shows up on the 27th and 2 weeks later it's on our agenda? There's no discussion about it at all. So, so that's on this particular issue. I've also proposed more than one time that we do a time limit. I'm fine with that. If you want to give me a 3-minute time limit or something, I'll be more organized. I'll get everything in 3 minutes. But if we're supposed to really evaluate these things, and they need to be a little more, and this isn't a dig on you at all. Don't, please. You guys are doing great. But we set this calendar up so that the board couldn't just drop things on us without Ted approving it. That we have it laid out. If it comes in on this day, it shows up in the public hearing this day. So you'll hear me apologize a lot for my style. It's just the way I do things, right? And so the way I've proposed is to, give me a time limit. I'm cool with that. That'll make everyone better. But I also think that this particular thing it's just been a goat road. I mean, we've done this road thing so many times now. And you know what? This was something that the board decided to do. It's not like we generated this language. So that's my comment on that. The second comment, as a new FiberLink customer, I want to commend Supervisor Johnson. I want to commend Supervisor White. What Orange County has done with regard to FiberLink is innovative. It's unusual. It's something that it's just a really, really great thing. The idea that, you know, where I live, I'm getting 700 megabits of download per second. And that's crazy. I mean, that is just, and it was done through this really creative, forward-thinking, well-planned out process. And so I just want to commend, I am hard on Supervisor White often, but he and Supervisor Johnson have done just a great job with FiberLink, and anyone else who's been involved with that, thank you. And I hope the whole county gets access to it. It's fabulous. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Yancey?
I have no comment. Chairman?
I got two, they're very quick. You don't have to apologize, Mr. Capel, for being who you are and how you operate. That's fine. But being the chairman, sometimes I just gotta stop it. It just doesn't matter where it's coming from, I just gotta stop it. And again, I apologize if someone feels like I've cut Mr. Capel or anybody off or pointed anybody. I'm just trying to make the meeting go forward. Keep the propelling motion, because sometimes we are like the dog chasing his tail. We just keep going around in circles with it. We just need to stop at some point. The second thing I want to say is, I want Mr. Johnson and Mr. White to get that in Unionville like y'all got in Boston, because I ain't got no fiber link. And I need it. Fiber link is 1 mile from my house and I can't get to it. I done called and asked, they told me I'm from, in 2022. I said, man, we'll go through another COVID before I get it. But I will say though, that I do have the privilege to go to Unionville School where I can jump right on. And having grandkids back in the house, it does help with someone being close. If they can't get their schoolwork done, they can take them up there to Unionville School and they can sit there and she can do her walks around the track there. So I stand with him on complimenting you all. That is a great project for the county. The real good part about that project is that it's further along now, knowing where we are with COVID. You got to stay home and virtual this and Zoom this. That's good planning and foresight. That's what we need in Orange County. So hats off to you for that. That's just good planning, good foresight, because there's a lot of counties wish they had us at that point. Julie, you up?
But I would just agree with your compliments for FiberLink. I have that where I am on Indiantown.
You got it in Indiantown,
Yeah.
but I can't get it.
Yeah.
Oh my
But at my
goodness.
work site on Clark's Mountain, we don't have it. And,
That's because you work right down the road from me.
yes, so really looking forward to that because it has been wonderful. And I have no further comment.
Yeah, I'll rub it in, rub it in. You got it too? Go ahead, Mr. Nichols, I'm sorry.
I have no comments, I don't have it.
You know, well, good, I'm glad somebody else doesn't have it this week too.
I was a guinea pig.
Oh, you got it too? Oh, my goodness, what is this here?
He had it before anybody had it.
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness. Look at this.
Michael Cass and I were the two guinea pigs.
Oh, my goodness, look at this.
They're
So,
our beta testers.
really, so I will say, as we close, our next meeting is September the 16th, 6 o'clock in this building. We have a lot to do, and we look forward to a lot of things. Now I solicit a motion to adjourn if all things are clear off the agenda.
So we have no meeting on the 2nd of September.
Well, I thought you said we had nothing.
We have no scheduled business. If you want an update on anything.
I mean, we still, I mean, I figure we got enough coming ahead, Steve, we don't need to pick that one. So September 16th, 6 o'clock in this building. I solicit a motion to adjourn if somebody so sees fit for us to go home. So moved. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, stay here. Okay, motion carried unanimously. Thank you all, and thank you all.